Hey folks, this episode of WTF is sponsored by Sub Pop Records. That's right, the Sub Pop Records. You can get comedy albums by David Cross, Eugene Merman, Flight of the Conchords, and others by visiting subpop.com/comedy. Fucking Sub Pop Records, man.
Lock the gate!
Are we doing this? Really? Wait for it. Are we doing this? Wait for it. Ow! What the fuck?
WTF.
And it's also, what the fuck? What's wrong with me? It's time for WTF. What the fuck?
With Marc Maron.
Okay, let's do this. How are you, what the fuckers, what the fuck buddies, what the fucking ears, what the fuck nicks? Welcome to the show. I am Marc Maron. This is What the Fuck. I am in my garage at the Cat Ranch in Highland Park, California, which is east of the center of Los Angeles. I'm excited about this show. You should be excited too. This is going to be an interesting show. It's a little different than the type of shows we usually do. It is a two-part show. It features someone I know you're all familiar with. Let's set it up this way. I got an email late June from Patton Oswalt. Wanted to know in the subject line, ... Judd Apatow wants your email. Wanted to ask you before I gave it to him. I assume you're cool with this, ... Patton. Huh. Well, let me think, Patton. Of course I'm cool with it. Send Judd Apatow my email address. What does he want? I've met Judd a couple of times, but I don't, it could be anything. He might want me to star in his next film. What are the chances? No, but it doesn't matter. Here's what he said after he got my email address. I'm digging your podcast. If you ever need a burnt-out Jewish writer of schlubs as a guest, I am in, Judd. Now, to me, this was extremely exciting because Judd Apatow is probably the biggest name in film comedy. He's one of the original comedy nerds, if not the first comedy nerd. He might have invented comedy nerds for a few reasons, primarily his involvement in writing and directing and producing Freaks and Geeks. He was also involved on a production level in The Larry Sanders Show, in the writing level, The Ben Stiller Show, his first film, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, and he did Knocked Up. He did Funny People. He did a bunch of film producing, Anchorman, The Cable Guy, Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, Walk Hard, Superbad. Jesus Christ, he's done a lot of movies. But this was a spectacular bit of flattery. Getting this email from Judd was very validating to me, and it was very exciting to me. And of course I wanted to have him on. So we went back and forth a few times with the emails, trying to figure it out when we could do it. He's a busy guy. He's a big movie producer. But he's a very sweet guy. So we work out a time, so I go to his office, and we lay it down, and we sit and talk for a couple hours. Now, what's great about me hooking up with Judd Apatow is that him and I have a lot in common. When I watched Freaks and Geeks recently, I didn't watch it when it came out. I'm a little older than Judd. I knew about Freaks and Geeks, but I just never got around to watching it. So literally, just by coincidence, within a week or so of getting the email, before I got the email from Judd or Patton, I just watched all of the Freaks and Geeks. And there was one moment in Freaks and Geeks in the whole series that resonated with me more than any other. And I'm going to talk to Judd about that because what I realized about Judd and what I know about myself was that we are deep fans of comedy, that we obviously come from something similar in the fact that whatever our childhoods were like, that comedy was really one of the few things that made us happy, that made us feel good, that took away the pain, that gave us a sense that things were going to be okay. Comedians from as early as maybe when I was 11 years old, I just always loved comedians. See, like when I was a kid, I remember going to see Jackie Vernon when I was like 11 years old. My parents took me to a dirty club. I've talked about this a bit on the show, and it was just mind-blowing to me. You know, comics always made me feel better. I wanted to talk to comics. I saw George Carlin when I was in 4th grade, and he signed my cast. I would watch the comics after school. I would stay up, on Merv Griffin, on the Mike Douglas show. I remember the first season of SNL. I would stay up and watch all those late on Saturday nights because I was a huge John Belushi fan and Chevy Chase fan. When I was in college in the first season of Letterman, I never missed Letterman. It's a mindset but it comes from a deep love of comedy. So I go talk to Judd, and it turns out he's really the same way, that he is an extreme fan of comedy and has been since he was very young, to the point where he, when he was 16 years old, did a series of interviews with comedians. But he was able to talk to people like Jay Leno, people like Jerry Seinfeld, Gary Shandling. And he happened to have these tapes. He had the tapes that he made when he was in high school digitized, and he gave me access to some of them. And what we're going to do with this first episode is we're going to talk to Judd a bit, and then we're going to listen to Judd as a 16-year-old interviewing Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno, and Gary Shandling, and what his intentions were around those interviews, but also just listening to a true fan of comedy and listening to these time capsules. I mean, these are 1983 that these interviews were done. And Judd he said he doesn't listen to these at all anymore because they make him uncomfortable. But I was thrilled to have him and thrilled to have the time with Judd to do this thing. And I got to be honest with you, when I went over there, I was in my standard sort of self-doubting, kind of existentially challenged, depressive drive down to Santa Monica to do an interview with really the biggest producer of films in the comedy genre that is alive right now, and knowing we're peers and having never really spent time with him, and I was judging myself. And something happened after these interviews, after I talked to him. He's a super nice guy, and also, like, I felt like I was talking to another, just a comedy fan, just a guy who loved comedy and stand-ups. And if I am anything, I am a stand-up, for better or for worse, or wherever my career may or may not be. I mean, that's how I identify myself. That's what I do. It was just touching. I felt much better. It changed my entire disposition after I talked to him. So here's what we have here. This first part one is going to be talking to Judd about some of his childhood, but getting into these interviews that he did when he was 16 years old and listening to some of those. And then part two will be more of a traditional WTF interview. And as you'll find in these interviews that Judd did when he was 16, it really is basically what I'm doing now. So he was way ahead of the curve on that as well. Back in the day when I was younger and rocked hard, though I still rock hard now, I listened to a lot of stuff from Sub Pop Records. Sub Pop Records turned me on to Nirvana Bleach I remember having, all the early Soundgarden, fucking Mudhoney, Mark Lanigan, the Vaselines. I mean, I had a lot of Sub Pop Records. I was into the whole Sub Pop thing, and they are sponsoring this show primarily because they are putting out some great comedy records. I mean, they put out both the Eugene Merman's albums. They put out one of Patton Oswalt's, Flight of the Conchords. You can get the comedy records if you go to www.subpop.com/comedy. And now they just sent me Dave Cross. My buddy Dave Cross's new record, Bigger and Blackerer, is out on Sub Pop Records, and you can get his first CD and DVD, Shut Up You Fucking Baby. But also this new one they're making available in this beautiful vinyl edition with a black velvet cover. It's just stunning. Let's call Dave. Let's call David Cross, and I want to know how he feels about this new record.
Hello?
David?
Yes.
Marc Maron.
Sweet.
How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm sitting on my trampoline.
You're sitting on your trampoline?
Yeah. I mean that literally, not figuratively. It's not like a self-help book from the 70s.
You have a trampoline?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Well, how often do you use it, if you don't mind me asking?
Once every 5 years. Yeah.
So, all right, so I'm holding, Sub Pop has sent me a big gift box, and I'm holding David Cross, Bigger and Blackerer, both in the CD form and in the vinyl form, and I think this is a great record. Are you happy with it?
I just got it sent to me like 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and I couldn't be more psyched. I mean, it's really cool. It's black velvet.
Yeah, it's a black velvet cover. It's stunning.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. And it was, I didn't have anything to do with the design. They just, Sub Pop said, hey, what if we do a limited edition, velvet thing? Yeah, great. And, yeah, it's really cool.
It's fucking great, Dave, and congratulations on it. And I'm very excited about it. I've listened to about half of it. It's very funny. I'm looking forward to the bonus material.
Yeah, the bonus, you know how it is when you're
make it a CD?
Yeah, there's some things that are, you know what, let's make that a bonus track. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just saying, let's put that behind the others. Let's put that in the back.
Let's make it the special one.
It's called rotating the stock, if you're familiar with
those are the special bonus
restaurant
tracks.
Industry.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the special bonus tracks, and when using the word special, it's like the special bus.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, buddy.
All right, man.
Thanks, man.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, well, there you have it. Sub Pop Records and their comedy albums. Patton Oswalt, Flight of the Conchords, Eugene Merman, of course, Dave Cross, who we just talked to. Go to www.subpop.com/comedy. Get this Black Velvet Cross album. It's fucking awesome. Awesome. So you can just grab a mic like a stand-up.
All right, I'm holding the mic. Is it happening now?
Yeah, sure.
This is it.
All right, do you want to lay down some rules?
I have no rules.
I'm in Judd Apatow's war room. Is this the war room?
This is the situation room.
Oh, the situation room. A lot of boards, things being outlined.
That's right.
You seem to have a similar problem that I do, is that I can't fucking read your writing.
Well, part of the reason why I have bad handwriting is when I used to do stand-up comedy, I would write jokes on planes, and I was always embarrassed that the person next to me would see what I was writing about.
Is that true?
Yes, and so I found a way to have terrible handwriting that only I could read. So if I was, writing some joke about impotency or something, exactly, he's showing me his handwriting, and it is unreadable.
It
to
is
me as well.
But you do it by design, really?
I did it. I found a way, and I still do it now. So if my wife sees any weird notes or joke ideas or things that might be offensive, that there's literally no way that she can read it.
Because I'm sitting here thinking, like, man, I got the scoop. There's a whole movie outlined on that board, and all I can make out, I think down on the lower left, does it say sperm issues?
It says sperm issues. Yes, okay. It does. But that would be in all of my movies.
And then I just see turns bad, and the rest is undecipherable.
Exactly.
But,
and it shall be until America gets to see this.
All right. Well, we won't tip it anymore. But you've got like 12 projects going on right now. 15.
Well, right now we're finishing up shooting a movie called Bridesmaids that Kristen Wiig wrote, and Paul Feig, who created Freaks and Geeks, is directing. She wrote it with Annie Mumolo, and there's an enormous amount of funny women in it. It is.
Is this an answer to the criticism that perhaps you've been a little hard on women?
It's funny. Is it an answer? As soon as I met my wife, Leslie Mann, who's an actress,
she's great.
She was always fed up with how bad the parts were for women. So whenever I write, I try to write better parts for women, partially so she won't be mad at me, whether or not they're for her or anybody. But I'm not a woman, so my first instinct isn't to write the female movie. And whenever I write women in my movies, I always try to be truthful and show them warts and all the way I show men. And it's interesting because some people, say, "Oh, you're making the women out to be bitches." And I think, well, I don't know, Seth Rogen in the middle of an earthquake runs out of the room with his bong and doesn't worry about his pregnant girlfriend.
Right.
So why can't you show women making mistakes? Like, I think the male mistakes are just as bad as the female mistakes. But I do know that I've showed women be much more hostile in movies than a lot of people have seen before. And that's partially a reaction to a lot of movies where the women are so perfect and they're gorgeous, but they can't find a man, and it didn't feel truthful. It's either that or I've just been yelled at by a lot of women throughout my life.
Well, I think what you say is a good point, though, that for some reason, even when men are being dicks, they're somewhat endearing to most people.
Yes.
And that the idea that even capturing women properly on screen, it doesn't happen that often.
I think that a lot of times they're the goal to get this beautiful woman to like me.
Yeah.
And in some of the movies we've done something different, which is, I'm in love with her, but it might be really complicated to have a relationship with her.
Yeah.
And I remember after the 40-Year-Old Virgin came out, there was a nice review in the New Yorker, and David Denby said, you could tell it's going to be really hard for the 40-Year-Old Virgin to be in a relationship with Catherine Keener, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
And that inspired me. Like, you can show that relationships are really complicated, but it is worth it. And over the years, I've realized that almost everything I thought I was right about in relationships with women, I have been wrong about.
In real life?
In real life. Like everything where I was very confident that I was correct, I think I was wrong completely.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson we're supposed to learn. I think we're wired that way.
It took me 25 years to figure out that I'm wrong.
And you should be thankful every day
exactly
for the woman you have.
I mean, there was that moment in Knocked Up where Leslie says to Paul Rudd, just because you yell doesn't mean you're not mean.
Right.
And a lot of people would walk up to me and say, wow, that's...
Yeah.
I've thought that about my husband for a very long time.
Really?
But that is a male thing, which is I'm controlled.
Just because you don't yell.
Yes.
Right.
I'm because I hold everything inside.
Right.
I'm superior because I'm not expressing emotions.
Right.
When in fact I'm just making myself sick by not expressing all my emotions.
I'll show you. I'll get cancer.
Yeah. I must be right because I'm quiet.
Isn't that called passive aggression?
It is, yes.
Well, I think that's a good place to start some of the conversation because I just not that we didn't start it, but I watched Freaks and Geeks for the first time.
Oh wow!
Recently, I don't know. It's nothing personal. I missed a lot of things, so it's literally fresh in my mind. And the interesting thing to me is that the one scene that resonates almost more than the rest to me is when Bill is watching Shandling after school.
Yes.
Like it's one scene. I mean, do people say that to you often? Because out of that entire series, for some reason, for me, I was like, that was beautiful.
There's a scene in the show for people who haven't seen it where Bill Haberchuck, played by Martin Starr, comes home after school and you could tell he's a latchkey kid and no one's around and his mom's a former stripper and he looks really sad and he watches Gary Shandling on the Dinah Shore show while making a grilled cheese sandwich and eating chocolate cake. And he goes from being really sad to laughing his ass off. And The Who is playing that song, I'm the One, I'm One, or something like that. And after we made it, Jake Kasdan said to me, that's the most personal thing you've ever done in your career. And it's the best thing you've ever done. That scene. And that was probably the turning point for my whole career, was realizing that the little moments that I thought were boring or just not interesting to other people are actually the things that people would be most interested in my work. I always thought I was a bore. That's why I quit stand-up comedy. I figured I'm not angry enough. I don't have a strong enough point of view. So I became good at writing for other comedians or writing movies in the voice of other comics. And it literally took me 20 years to think, these little things that happen to me are what people will connect with. Yeah,
absolutely. And sometimes it's just I'm a little dumbfounded in the sense that, like, out of all the things that I didn't read anything on that, and that resonated with me. That there are moments that you capture, and even in the films, where they're undeniably real. So there's something that they have that transcends anything that can be manufactured.
Yes, I think that when you watch a scene like that, you realize that happened.
And it happened to you.
It happened to me, and I used to go home every day at 3 o'clock from school. My friends played sports. I had a lot of friends, but I didn't play sports. And I would go home and watch The Mike Douglas Show, The Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, The Tonight Show, Letterman when he started. And, I mean, there was a fair amount of time where I was watching TV from about 3:30 till 1:30 in the morning.
Right.
For years.
Was your mom not around?
I lived with my dad after my parents got divorced, and I just didn't do any after-school activities.
And he didn't care?
No one cared. I mean, I just went in my room and closed the door, and I was in my fantasy world watching, Michael Keaton do stand-up on the Mike Douglas Show, and I couldn't have been happier, and I look back on it as a great time. I don't think, that was so sad. I was alone in my room. I was, like Bill, laughing my ass off watching Jay Leno in 1979 on the Mike Douglas show.
I had that fucking same experience. Because one of them, I still remember one of the moments I decided to be a comic was watching him. Jay Leno, yes. I don't know if it was on Mike Douglas, but I remember the joke. Yeah. Like they were cutting away to a commercial and he was on that ridiculous set. And he said, what happens now? Does the chair fold up into the wall like we're on a game show? Am I going to disappear? Yeah. And it was just a moment. It was a beat. But I remember thinking it was the most hilarious thing I'd ever heard in my life.
I remember going to see the Merv Griffin show being taped. That's how into it I was.
In New York?
In Los Angeles when I was in high school. And Dr. Ruth was the other guest.
Yeah.
And she's taking calls, giving sex advice. And Jay Leno realizes that this makes no sense because the show doesn't air for a month. And where are the calls coming from? Like, is there someone backstage who's like, he calls her on it. Like, these are not real calls. Where are these people coming from? And I thought, that is the coolest guy in the world. I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And that is all I ever wanted to be when I was a kid. I wanted to be like Leno and Seinfeld and Michael Keaton as a stand-up.
Yeah, I vaguely remember Michael Keaton as a stand-up. It seems that my guys, I remember seeing Leno on shows. I don't remember Seinfeld that much. I remember Richard Lewis a lot on Letterman.
David Brenner used to be the king of the Mike Douglas show.
Yeah, he would be, he'd guest hosted the Tonight Show 70, 80 times or something.
Yeah.
So those were your guys, Keaton, Seinfeld, and who was the other one? And Jay Leno.
And Leno, I mean, I used to love Jeff Altman. Used to make me laugh so hard.
I see him the other night.
Yeah.
I said we'd mentioned him on the podcast recently. I still go to the Comedy Store sometimes, and he's back around. The butt steak guy in the
funny.
Pulling up his pants.
And I couldn't get enough of it. And I've looked back on it and wondered, why did I like it so much? What was it that I was attracted to, where I was obsessed to the point of highlighting the TV Guide so I knew when the comics were on each show.
Did you read My Favorite Jokes in Parade magazine? That was that Sunday. It was a Sunday insert. Maybe you didn't have it.
I didn't.
Maybe you're a little younger than me. But it used to be in Parade magazine. The last page used to be a thing called My Favorite Jokes, where they just have comedians' jokes. Written there.
I used to transcribe Saturday Night Live because there was no VCR when it first aired. So I would record it on a audio cassette.
How old? What, the first season you talking about?
Like in 77 or...
So you're like 10? How old were you?
10. I have the transcriptions of Bill Murray's Oscar picks bit from Weekend Update in notebooks.
Why did you do that?
I don't know. I think that I was in some way trying to figure out, how do I get in that world? How does it work? I wanted to look at it on paper. I didn't know that's what I was doing. But I did it
because you thought it was so funny.
I wanted to break it down somehow.
Really? Like an equation?
I guess. I wasn't conscious.
Did you do that with stand-up as well?
I didn't. I did it with Saturday Night Live sketches and some Twilight Zones. I would write out the opening to the Twilight Zone. I wanted to be able to tell it to my friends.
So you performed it? To your friends, I mean.
No, not really. I mean, just maybe a line or two.
Right.
But, so in 75, I was 8. That's when Saturday Night Live came on. And Steve Martin hit 76, 77, 78. That's the height of Richard Pryor. Monty Python was hitting America. I was losing my mind with comedy nerdness.
Well, it wasn't even invented yet. You were an original. Yeah, exactly. The comedy nerds didn't exist yet. You were just a kid who was precocious, in a sense. Because when you think about what a lot of other kids, because I was the same way in that I resonated with these comics. They made me feel better, and I thought they had a certain amount of control, it seemed.
Yes.
That they could handle shit.
Well, they had a stance on why the world didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And they would call everyone on their shit. And I look back and think, I must have been angry that I wanted Leno to call everybody out and Seinfeld to say, look how ridiculous it all is. And especially George Carlin, anyone who called bullshit, I couldn't get enough of those people. I
saw him when I was in fourth grade, I think, or fourth or fifth grade. I went to see George Carlin. And I remember those records. I remember having them. And I'll tell you, Harry Shearer said something to me that, just to get your opinion on it. He said the reason people are comedians is that it's to have control over why people laugh at you?
I've looked at it this way. When someone is laughing, I know they don't dislike me. I don't know if they like me, but I know in that moment they don't dislike me.
Yeah.
And that's why, I get the need for constant approval. Because if you're smiling, I know you don't hate me. I don't know if it's positive, but it's not in the negative. And that's why, when we were making Funny People, and I thought a lot about comedy and why I was obsessed with it, to the point of like sitting down and listening to 30 of your podcasts in several days. A lot of it was about that. Why do I need that much approval? Is there any point where I get enough approval and I'm full? And I've realized that there is no point.
Really?
I received a letter from Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg, who I used to work for a long time at DreamWorks, was trying to reach me to say that he liked Knocked Up. And I so wanted a letter from him. Paul Feig got one when we made Freaks and Geeks, and I was so jealous that he got a letter saying that he loved Freaks and Geeks. And I didn't return the call, and I told my assistant, can you say Judd's out of town, and is it possible that he could write a note just so I could have the letter? I knew a compliment was coming, and I'm so wounded, I needed to have it forever. And he sent me the dream letter, the beautiful, beautiful letter, with nothing but kindness. A great guy. It's just what you want to feel whole as a person, and I have it.
Yeah.
But what happened afterwards is I thought to myself, this is the best you can do.
Yeah.
Who else do I want to compliment me? How many of these do I need to feel good about my work and myself? And how it doesn't last, and the wound is still there.
What is the wound? Because I know I have it. Have you figured out what it is?
I'm not sure exactly. I've had therapists who say everything that happened to you happened in the first 3 years of your life.
So yeah,
it may just be the way your mom looked at you.
Really?
I mean, who knows?
Yeah. You believe that?
I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I do know that in every situation I walk into, and it doesn't matter, whether things are going well for me in life or career-wise or not, I feel like the weirdo. I feel like the awkward guy picking up my kids from school. I feel that way on the set of my own movies.
Uncomfortable in your own skin?
I never feel like I own the moment. I feel like
you feel like you're a victim of the moment.
I just feel like a punch could come from any direction, even if I'm everyone's boss. It doesn't matter. Like that's what I'm realizing is, you have to just realize, okay, that's how you're wired, and
so you're able to transcend it.
And that if I just acknowledge it, some of it will disappear, and that's a little bit what Funny People was about, which is. He gets sick and says, "What was the point of all this? I'm here in this house and I'm all alone, and everyone outside likes me. I don't have, strong relationships, and why did I do this?" And that's what people say. Sometimes you make movies or you write things to find out why you made the movie, and that's what that whole experience was about.
And that a lot of that was drawn from your early career with in the sense that you were you had a mentor in Shandling, right?
I had a bunch of mentors. People were very nice to me when I was young. I always try to clarify to people the reason why it took me so long to make a movie about a mentor relationship was because people were so nice that there was no story. Shandling hired me to write the Grammys for him in 1990.
How old were you?
So I was 23.
Yeah.
And then he hired me on the Larry Sanders Show after the Ben Stiller Show got canceled, and has been helpful to me on everything I've ever done. So there's no great Shandling story. I used to write jokes for Jim Carrey and worked on some of his movies. So I had to fabricate a character that was an amalgam of a lot of people, but slowly you realize, it's just me. It's just the worst part of me. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly it all makes sense.
Almost like your dreams are supposed to be everybody in your dreams is you. So now you can look in the same way that in your movie, somehow or another, everyone's you.
It does. does work that way. It's different sides of you. Here's me at my worst. Here's me at my angriest.
Here's me as a pregnant woman.
Exactly. Well, yes. Here's me at my neediest. Here's me screaming at the crowd. I mean, so your thoughts are coming out in different ways. And some of it is observations of other people. Some of the rants in Funny People were based on me watching Rodney Dangerfield at 1 a.m. yell at the crowd. And, one night he was in his bathrobe or something.
Sure, he used to get out of his car in his bathrobe. Where was this?
At the Improv, and he gets on stage, and he just didn't do his act, and it was fantastic. It's your favorite comedy fan moments.
Yeah.
And he said to the crowd, "Yeah, sometimes life makes perfect sense, and then you come." And then there was a woman there, and he says, "Oh yeah, you're beautiful, yeah, you'd be different. You'd love me for me." And it was brutal. It was brutal to watch.
Because at that point, when before he was medicated, the sadness and the anger was you couldn't hide it anymore. And when you get a few cocktails,
and it was fantastic to watch. And I've seen a bunch of people have that meltdown where it's 1 a.m. and they drop the act and they tell you what they're going through.
Yeah.
And
that's my act.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's my favorite part of comedy is when you get to that next place. And when my favorite scene in Funny People in terms of the performance was Adam singing the song at the piano, "Fuck George Simmons," and he just improvised it. He said, "Tonight I'm going to do something on the piano," and we were trying to create one of those moments where someone just has the meltdown in front of the crowd. And after we shot it, I said to Adam, "I don't know if we could use that. That was pretty crazy and
pretty dark, yeah."
And then one of the editors put it together, and I thought, yeah, that captures those moments. I remember seeing Paul Rodriguez one night late at the Improv just go on a rant, and it was one of the funniest sets I've ever seen in my entire life.
You don't see it as much as you used to. I mean, in the clubs, I don't know how often you go out there anymore, but there was a time, that generation, there seemed to be a little more freedom and a little less eyes on everybody. You can still see it at the Comedy Store, and I don't go to the Improv much, but I mean there was a time, it seemed, in the 80s where the meltdown was fairly commonplace.
I remember seeing Larry David rant at the crowd, and the moment, those moments between midnight and 1:30 in the morning at the Improv is where a lot of the great things happened. And
what did you just hang out there?
I was the MC. I used to MC 4 or 5 nights a week at the Improv in Hollywood.
What year? How old were you then?
From about 88 to 93. So from the time I was about 21 to 24 years old. So I was there every night. I watched everybody, and I remember when Michael Richards got in trouble for his performance that night. I had seen him do things like that. But it really was for comedy's sake. He always had a point. It was crazy and experimental and daring, but it certainly wasn't racist at all. So when I saw that, I thought, oh, he just did it bad that night.
Right.
And it came across wrong.
Yeah.
But I'd seen a lot of comedians do things like that.
Sure.
And in the age of YouTube and everyone having a camera, you can't do that anymore. And I remember when we were working on Funny People, Sandler was working on his act, and it was scary to think we were going to write all these songs all these jokes for a bitter character, and they started appearing on YouTube as if it was Adam doing his act.
Right.
And that's scary for comics now.
Yeah, I think also that with Michael Richards, the context, people don't know him as a comic. Our experience of people, even as Sandler as a comic, I think that gets further away for some people as well, doesn't it? I mean, he doesn't do it much anymore.
No, that was, for me, the treat of making the movie, is that I am a gigantic fan of his stand-up comedy. So making the movie was a way to force him to write a new hour, and we would go to comedy clubs.
And he did it?
And he would do stand-up, and he was hilarious. Some nights it would go awfully, and some nights he would kill. And it was way dirtier than his act used to be, because that's what I was requesting, was a certain an act that was filled with denial. I thought, well, George Simmons doesn't actually tell you the truth. And you might understand from the context of the movie that he's doing a silly joke, but actually it's covering up for a real wound. But I didn't want him to be Richard Pryor. I wanted him to be more like Rodney.
Yeah, well, that scene where you had some of those guys sitting around that table, who was it? Monty Hoffman,
Yes.
Paul Reiser,
Carol Leifer,
George
Wallace was there.
That
Mark
was,
Schiff.
I mean, that is a crew of comics outside of Reiser that not many people know. I mean, this is an interesting thing about comedy, and I think you know it. It's just, how many there are, how many of that generation have sort of disappeared or no one knows anymore. Are you ever saddened by that? I mean, I know you seem to be on the pulse of what's happening, but I mean, in terms of that old guard or like people that you knew growing up, are you saddened by what happens to comics as they get older?
I did go into Best Buy once, and a comic who was hilarious was a salesman there. And that was rough. That made me sad because I thought I was never as funny as that guy.
Yeah.
That guy really used to kill. And it happened another time at a car dealership because there were those guys who would rip the house down.
Yeah.
But at some point, you can't go on the road anymore. If you want to have a life and kids, you can't be on the road 35 weeks.
But also
a year.
there's the element that same sort of wound that you're talking about can swallow people. And the fact is that somehow or another, for reasons that maybe I don't know, you were able to manage your talent and be, political and ambitious enough to get what you wanted to get done.
I was very lucky that part of my dysfunction as a person is a terror of bankruptcy, financial bankruptcy, not emotional bankruptcy, and so
spiritual bankruptcy.
So as a young person, I thought 10 years ahead. So I had a show like this in high school where I interviewed comedians like Leno and Seinfeld and John Candy.
How did you manage to get hold of them?
I used to call all their publicists and say I was from a radio station in New York, and all the publicists were too lazy to look it up and figure out that it was a high school radio station. But I was afraid that I was going to not be able to take care of myself in my life.
Yeah.
So in my head, I always thought, well, what do I need to do? Okay, I'll interview these comedians, and they'll tell me how to be a comedian. They'll tell me how to write. They'll tell me what it's like. And to be 16 years old and sit down with Jerry Seinfeld, and for a half an hour he literally tells you how he writes a joke, how he first got on stage, how long it took him to get good, it just changed everything for me because I thought, okay, it takes 7 years to find your character.
When did this all start, being funny as a kid?
Yeah, I guess so, although it was not like a real... I wasn't a class clown, per se. I mean, I wrote some funny things for the newspaper, and I was always trying to be funny around my friends. And watching comedy was the thing I enjoyed more than anything else. I was obsessed with... I knew every comedian, I knew all their routines, and I loved it so much. That's how I got into it. I wanted to be around it, and I never thought I'd be any good at it, but that turned out to be an advantage because it made me work harder than most other people work at it.
And when did you first do it?
I did a Catch a Rising Star one night. My first time on stage, I write the whole act out, and I put it there on my bed and I rehearse it over and over again. I'm standing there with a bar of soap, like it's a microphone. And I get up on stage, and I got this thing memorized cold. I get up on there, it's gone. I can't remember a word, a thing. I stood there for about 30 seconds with saying absolutely nothing, just standing there freaking out. I just couldn't believe that all these people are looking at me. And then I was able to just remember the subjects I wanted to talk about. This is absolutely true. I'm not embellishing this at all. I stood there and I went, the beach, driving, your parents, and people started laughing because they thought this is my act. And I couldn't even really hear them laughing. I was like absolutely panicking. And I think I lasted about 3 minutes and I just got off. And that was my first show.
And what was it supposed to be? Like, what was the original jokes that you wrote out?
Oh, there's a couple I'm still doing. The bumper car routine, I don't know if you've ever seen that. I do this thing about there's always one bad driver on the bumper cars. It's like one helpless kid who's like, as soon as the ride gets started, he gets stuck in a pack of empty cars. Yeah. Father and son team are spinning around. It's the...
How old were you when you did it the first time?
22. 21 maybe. I was still in college, I think.
And what did you study in college?
Theater and film and television. I did 2 majors.
And how long did it take you to develop the act so that you got laughs steady?
It depends on what you mean by steady laughs. I mean, the worst I ever was I would bomb every other time. That's how bad it was in the beginning. And then it progressed to that point, and 8 months after I began, I was making a living.
At Catch a Rising Star?
The comic strip, actually.
And how does that work when you audition and then get steady work?
Well, you audition, you start off at 3 in the morning, and you fight your way through the order hopefully by doing better than the guy that they put on ahead of you. And next night they put you on ahead of him. And then you try and do better than the guy and they watch you, and it's of course a lot of politics, but basically if you're good, people notice it. That's the greatest thing about comedy, which is really the big reason I got into it, is if you've got talent, it's unmistakable. And no one misses it, and you don't have to wait around for a break.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get a break. It's very hard to be good enough.
So now you're 16 years old. You're talking to Jerry Seinfeld, even though he wasn't huge yet, in the sense that he didn't get huge for another almost 10 years from when you talked to him when you were 16. But he was your hero, or one of them.
Yes, I used to watch him on the Merv Griffin Show and the Tonight Show.
Right.
I think he started doing talk shows in the late 70s,
Yeah.
Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I just know that because at the Comedy and Magic Club, he signed The Wall in 1978. But to me, he was the greatest. There were the 3 or 4 people that I loved, and Seinfeld was definitely one of them. And I used to go see him at Caroline's in New York because it was the only comedy club that would allow kids in.
On 9th Avenue, the old one.
Yes, because it was a supper club, so I could go there and have dinner with my friends when I was 15, 16 years old and go see Pee Wee Herman or Howie Mandel or whoever.
Oh, my God, that's so long ago. That club, it was a nice club, the separate room or the dinner club. It wasn't the South Sea, it wasn't the second one or the third one. It was that first one.
The first
Classy.
one, it seemed to seat about 85, 90 people, and people would have a fancy dinner and see a comedian, and it almost felt like something from the 30s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like a burlesque, not burlesque, but like it had class. It seemed like it had class. But like when you're sitting there, you seem pretty calm. You don't seem. You're a fan, but you're also like you're fairly deliberate. You have a plan. You have an interview. I mean, there's one of these interviews. I think it was the one with Seinfeld where you're like, well, I think that's it. You're literally. Were you freaking out inside, or what were you really trying to do there?
I truly think that it happened right after my parents got divorced, and I just thought, I got to get my shit together. I got to get something going in this life. I really need to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Because when your parents get divorced, they just make terrible mistakes.
Yeah.
And they fight, and you see that adults have very real flaws.
Yeah.
And I think my instinct was, oh, my God, maybe they're wrong about all sorts of stuff they've been telling me. and if my mom thinks my dad's the devil, and if my dad is enraged at my mom, then maybe some of this advice they've been giving me is wrong about things. I mean, I don't think he's the devil. He's very nice to me, and it just completely threw me. Like, what is it? Because it's important that you just believe your parents. Like, they know what they're talking about, and there's a comfort in they're sane.
Yeah.
And so when you see them, at a terrible moment, at their worst, and they're screaming at each other, and it's really like madness for a couple of years. My reaction was, first,
nothing is true.
I don't believe anything. I don't know. I can't rely on these people because they can't rely on each other.
Yeah.
And they've bailed on each other.
Yeah.
And I felt in some way, I felt bailed on. Like,
Yeah, of
our
course.
whole family isn't important enough for you guys to just figure out how to get along. You're
Yeah.
literally going to, one of you is going to leave, and I'm going to see the other one, like, randomly. And it was terrible.
It's awful.
And so going to talk to these comedians felt like, okay, this is the direction that safety is in.
So when you were asking Seinfeld about where he saw his career going, you were like, this is an option.
The real question was, where is my career going?
Yeah.
And I really was curious. I mean, how do you get on stage? Do you sign up?
Yeah.
How many minutes do they let you do?
You were in sort of a crisis mode.
I was in total crisis mode. I was losing my mind. I thought I need a job, and I also had a sense that my parents were not going to be able to afford college.
Yeah.
Because they were having financial problems, and even though I was, getting ready to go to college, I didn't have a lot of comfort that I would be able to complete it.
Right.
And so I thought, well, why don't you just jump right into your dream? Just have the balls to do it.
And all these things you were doing in the guise of, you were using these on the radio show in high school.
I probably aired 4 of them. I mean,
Right.
The entire idea of interviewing comedians was a ruse. It was just an excuse to force Jay Leno to talk to me for an hour and a half. Because every kid has that. Like, you want to meet a star, and you want to ask them how they do it, and especially if you want to do what they do. So how can I get in a room and say, how do you do it?
Right.
I know to a normal fan, you might give me 90 seconds.
Right.
But if I can pretend that I have a radio show, you'll give me an hour.
And also, they comedians love to talk. I mean, like, I know, like, I've done interviews with, college kids and whatever.
Yes.
You're like, oh, hey, this is a fine opportunity for me to be influential.
Exactly. This child seems very impressed with me. I must be important because look how he's listening to me as if it might change his life.
It did, though.
It did change my life. And when those comedians were in that stage,
Yeah.
people weren't that interested in them.
And the Leno thing, what was interesting in you talking to Leno in 1983 is that he was the least disciplined out of all of them. That he was just a sort of the proletariat comic. Like, he didn't write anything down. He saw it specifically as a job. If you can't do your job on any night, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Exactly.
And he was really kind of sarcastic, and you brought that up. You were very concise with him.
How would you describe your comedy if you had to say it? It seems a little, sarcastic and observational.
Yeah, that about sums it up, I guess. Sarcastic and observational. I guess, I don't know. I try not to, I don't even say I'm a comedian on stage. I mean, I just kind of do it and let people form their own opinion about what it is. I mean, to sit and pontificate about the wonder of it all is a bit narcissistic. I don't know. You just do it, and if it seems instinctively funny, that's the thing. As you move along in the business and you get a little bit more experience, like now, I can go into Letterman, think of a joke that day, and do it on the show, and 99% chance it'll work. Whereas the old days, you kind of have to go over the routine more and more. The more experience you get, the more attitude your material becomes, and you can just talk, and it comes out funny, Working with audiences is like being an animal trainer somewhat. If you go in the ring and you're a little bit nervous and your hand's shaking, the animals sense it and they rip you apart. And the same thing with audiences. If you get up there and go, hi, everybody, how you doing? People go, get off the stage. They're not going to laugh. But if you use a little bit of authority and kind of take charge,
Is most of your humor worked out on the stage? I mean, some people work it out on paper and they think
I don't
about
have
it.
anything on paper. No, I've never written anything down. I suppose I should. Everybody says, you should make notes. I seem to remember the funniest stuff and forget the stuff that isn't that funny. Once in a while I forget a funny one, but... no, I don't write anything down. I should, though. You're right. I see you have notes and everything there. I don't have any of that. I should keep copious notes, but I don't.
So how do you keep it from getting boring if you're playing so many places every night?
I mean, it's a job. You have to do your work, I mean, you can't... It's not a hard way to make a living. It's a fun way. You make a lot of money for having essentially a good time. And if you can't get up for it, well, then get out of the business. People say, well, gee, what happens when you're just not in the mood? Well, I mean, the worst I ever have is a bad hour. Most people have a bad day. I mean, if I can't fake it for an hour. My wife can tell. My wife will say, gee, you didn't seem quite up as you usually are. But I don't think most of the audience can tell. I mean, because you're a professional. It's like anything else. You do your job. You can't say, I'm too tense tonight. I can't go on, ladies and gentlemen. Do your work. That's part of the business.
But don't you ever get bored of it?
I get a kick out of doing it. I change it a little bit on a nightly basis, and you try out new jokes and whatnot. I mean, the whole idea is to keep coming with new things and new ideas. Sometimes you work an hour just to get one new line in, just to get to that point, and that's what I do. No, it doesn't get boring for me. I really like it.
My parents got divorced, and my mom moved to Southampton, and my parents used to own a restaurant, and the bartender at the restaurant was Rick Messina.
Oh, my God.
Right? So Rick Messina, who's the great manager who represents Tim Allen.
And also managed Rodney's Club in New York for years, in Dangerfields.
No, he managed the East Side Comedy Club on Long Island, which was the first comedy club on the island.
Okay.
And a bunch of clubs.
Oh, he didn't work with Dangerfield?
He may have later.
Okay.
But it was East Side Comedy Club and then East End Comedy Club. So when my parents got divorced, my mom had no money, got a job seating people at her former bartender's comedy club. And I mean, this was the dream situation for me. So this is ninth grade, and it's the summer, and my mom is seating people at a comedy club.
Yeah.
And so every weekend I would go watch every show, and it was Leno, Paul Provenza, first show I ever saw of a young comedian. And years later, I thought, that's really kind of the worst job ever. What could my mom have gotten paid?
Sure, to be a hostess at a comedy club.
And I like to think that she did it because she knew I would like it. She never said that.
You can't ask her?
My mom, she died a few years ago.
I'm sorry.
And that's how I like to look at it, like that was like a gift to me.
Yeah. That's sweet. So what... So you saw Leno, you saw Provenza, you saw this was 1980 what?
So this is 82 or 83, and then I got a job at Rick Messina's comedy club after that as a dishwasher, and only so I could see the comedians. Then I realized I can't see the comedians. I'm in the fucking kitchen.
Yeah.
So I switched to a busboy, and I was at East Side Comedy Club, and Eddie Murphy used to come in, and Rosie O'Donnell was just starting at that time. And I would watch the comedians, and I thought, I don't have the balls to tell these people I want to do this. It may have been obvious to them, but I couldn't even tell anyone. I was so scared. So after I did the radio program in my senior year of high school, I finally got up at open mic nights, and it was awful, just so awful.
But paralyzingly, it's so terrifying.
And John Mulrooney's hosting the open mic nights.
What happened to him?
And he just... I mean, it was pandemonium how much he would kill, and he would insult the crowd.
I remember him.
He was fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm sure he still is. But to go on after that, when you have no idea what you're doing and you're 17 years old.
And you had to wait for God knows how long? I mean, there was that whole thing that people forget, that like literally if you were doing an open mic, you didn't get any special treatment. And the host, it all depended on his humanity, how he was going to treat you and what he was going to put you through.
And there'd be 20 comedians, all who get 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
you never knew if Mulrooney might, he might do 20 minutes between acts.
Right.
And so you might get on at 8:05 or 1 in the morning.
So you started, you're like the real deal. You came from a real comedy background, almost in a way that none of us did. I mean, many of us who started in those open mics didn't watch comedy till we were stuck in those rooms and we had to. But you were actually just compelled to be there as a busboy. What were you, like 16 then?
Yes,
15?
16.
That's hilarious. So you wanted nothing more than to be in the comedy business from early on.
From the earliest time I understood that people got on stage with mics.
And
I never had any interest in doing anything that I'm doing right now. It was not part of the dream. If you listen to those interviews, it's all joke writing. It's not screenwriting. I'm not talking about how I love movies and I love paying attention to what the cinematographers are doing. I literally want to understand the mechanics of a dick joke. That's my vision quest.
Yeah, and that's
was
what
to figure that out.
And that's what you got from Gary. I mean, that it was interesting. There's a couple moments that are great in these interviews. Is that, and I know it just from doing it because you're really doing some version of the show I'm doing now. When you're 16,
without the courage to go personal.
Right. But it's there because there's a vulnerability to you because of your age, and there, you wouldn't expect you to get too deep in terms of what their life is, or could you help me with my parents' divorce?
That would have been the best version of it. If I told how to write a joke and then went, my parents were fighting a lot, and why do you think that they have this animosity towards each other?
But that's the only difference between what you did when you were 16 and what I'm doing now.
Exactly. Yes.
But there's moments where where I'm interviewing on this show where I'm thoroughly entertained by who I'm sitting with. And it's a great feeling to be like, there's times in these interviews where you laugh, where it's so clear that this is the best show in the world. I mean, I'm the only one here.
Well, when I interviewed Seinfeld the first time, my brother was with me, and you could hear him laughing. I heard the second laugh, yeah. And he's laughing in the background. And to us, it was like being in the room with Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
I think to some extent, we had a vision for what Jerry Seinfeld was, more than Jerry Seinfeld had a vision for what Jerry Seinfeld was.
Yeah, because he thought he was the best.
Yeah, well, it was like being in a small club seeing REM in Athens, Georgia in the early 80s.
Right.
We knew what we were seeing and who we were talking to.
A really small club. Just you and your brother.
Exactly.
And what happened to me when I was listening to that, I did what you do when you listen to good comedy with somebody else. Like, you started laughing at the bumper car joke, and then I started laughing in my car coming over here because I don't know that joke. But it's a great joke. It's a great observation.
And you know, the great thing about it was most of those people were very, very nice. And so it also made me feel like, oh, this is a world of strange people who might accept me one day. I don't feel that different than Seinfeld. He grew up on Long Island. I grew up on Long Island. So did Paul Reiser. I felt like, oh, I am one of you. I just haven't figured out how to do it yet.
Right. Now, the Shandling conversations. So that was the first time you talked to him?
That was the first time I ever talked to Gary. Somehow I hunted down a very weak publicist and convinced them to let me talk to Gary. I guess at the time that wasn't a big deal because Gary was just opening up for Joan Rivers in Vegas or something. He was still a very young comedian.
Well, that's interesting. That the theme of all of these clips is that, you know, none of them were as big as they became. I mean, this was just them. None of them had broken yet.
Yes, I have to be proud of one thing.
Yeah.
I had good taste in comics. I did like the right guys.
You know, I was a comedy writer before I was a comedian.
Really? Who did you write for?
I wrote for Sanford and Son and Welcome Back, Kotter.
Really?
And, the Harvey Korman show. I wrote for about 6 sitcoms before I said I want to do stand-up. So I have an ability to write jokes, which I like to do. So every now and then I'll be writing about my life, and I'll just think of a joke. And it's just purely, really a joke, but...
What would be like an example of how a piece of material got thought of and how it developed?
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. This is unlike other material of mine. I do this joke in my act that I've heard every excuse for a woman not going to bed with me. I think I've heard them all. I remember this one girl actually said to me, look, not with this Falkland Island thing. And I said, that was over a year ago. And she said, I still haven't gotten over it yet. And I said, well, I can understand that, Mrs. Thatcher. Now, I could tell you about the derivation of so many jokes, because some of them take literally a year from the time I get an idea to the time I get the line exactly right. And I'll tell you one I'm working on, and after this, I'll tell you a real current one.
Okay.
So, but with the Falkland Island joke, I got the idea... when the Falkland Islands were going on, is it about 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
I actually wrote a joke where I used to come out and I used to say, boy, I'm just not meeting any women. I don't know if it's this Falkland Island thing or what. And then as time went by, I changed it to, I've heard every excuse for a woman not going to bed with me. I remember this one girl said, not with this Falkland Island thing,
Yeah.
which is very hip and it gets a laugh. And I was telling David Brenner that joke. And David says, then you ought to say, that was over a year ago. Because that's funny, because, you know,
Yeah.
you should say, well, that was over a year ago.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, she still hasn't gotten over it yet. And then later came the tag of, well, I can understand that, Mrs. Thatcher. So it just kind of kept going, you know, it just kept going over time, that joke. And it really is a joke, although it is my sort of perspective.
And you said there's another one?
There's one I'm working on now. I actually did this joke on The Tonight Show, but in a different way. This is also just a stupid joke, really. But I said I've been taking... I went to a health food store, and I've been taking bee pollen, bumblebee pollen,
Yeah.
to increase my... It's supposed to increase your lovemaking stamina. So I've been taking about 2,000 milligrams of bee pollen a day. And the other night I woke up in the middle of the night and started to fling myself against the screen door. And I started to shout, someone turn off the porch light. And it's interesting because I don't know how this joke is ultimately going to evolve, because I actually did this joke on The Tonight Show where I just said, I took 2,000 milligrams of bee pollen, and now I'm afraid the first time I make love, I'm going to die right afterwards.
Yeah.
Because that's what bees do. And then I said, or I'll wake up the next morning, I'll be flinging myself against the screen door. But now I've added the part about turn off the porch light, which I think paints the picture of what bees do, which is go for the light, you know?
Yeah.
Now, well, just to tell you, and this is not a great joke either, but I do this joke about, I read this article in the newspaper that we tend to pick out mates who look like us.
Yeah.
Which is a scary thought. We tend to pick out mates who look like us. So I've been standing in front of the mirror with a wig and dress on, so I'll know her when I see her. Now, what's funny is I originally, when I wrote that joke, I used to say, I'll stand in front of the mirror with lipstick on, so I'll know her when I see her. And then I tried, I'll stand with a wig and lipstick on. And so you just keep playing around with it. But you play around with it I don't play around with it always in an intellectual way. I play around with it instinctually. So I'll get on the stage, and because I really am naturally funny, it comes from instinct, I ad-lib different things in that joke all the time, and then I just hit wig and dress, and as subtle as it sounds, it makes a difference.
Yeah, like all comedians, ad-lib jokes and keep them in the act. But do you sit down and actually, with an idea and sit down and try to work it out on paper, or no?
Yeah, I do both. I mean, because I often ad-lib an idea, really often, and write it down, and then sometimes I develop it further.
Yeah. But when did this all begin, this whole interest in comedy?
Well, I mean, it really is back to when I was a kid. I mean, I had total interest in comedians when I was 10 years old.
That was the first time I ever spoke to him. Then I met him when I was working at the Comedy Magic Club, and my manager, Jimmy Miller, was there. And he said, hey, Shandling's going to do the Grammys, and he needs jokes. And he said to Gary, you should hire Judd. Judd will write you some jokes. And then Gary didn't really respond. And then 3 months later, out of the blue, he called me and said, could you help me write some jokes?
Did he remember you from when you were in high school?
No. In fact, I probably didn't mention that for years.
Really?
After that.
To any of these guys?
No, that was never my in. I never tried to connect that I had met them.
But but now have you brought it up to Leno and Seinfeld and to Shandling that you had interviewed them when you were 16?
I've mentioned it, and all of them don't remember it and don't seem very interested in it either. Seinfeld was very nice. He just said, I totally forgot about that, and got a kick out of it.
But these guys gave you the blueprint for your life.
Yes, they did. They don't, those people don't get completely the significance of it, but because they might be having that effect on a lot of people. That what they do.
I find that hard to believe, because if somebody writes me an email or even says that I change them in any way, not only does it make me feel good, but I have to fight the urge to go like, what did I do?
Well, hopefully maybe they do get it. Maybe it's just something that it's hard to express or connect about, because it is such a powerful thing. It's almost weird to look someone in the eye and say, you changed my life. It's almost a stalkery thing to do, but in some way I've been a little bit connected to some of those people, and they've been very nice to me as the years go by. I treasure when Seinfeld sends me a note and says he likes funny people or something.
Right.
It means more to me than he ever could know, because I literally thought about him as I made it, and I thought, one day Seinfeld's going to see this, and I better not fuck it up.
Yeah. In the Shandling conversation, like, I learned something there. I could hear you, because the conversation was very specific, and you said it was your first conversation with him, and it's about writing jokes, and about, in more so than any of the other interviews, about the career of writing.
Yes.
That there was something, but you're telling me that you're only coming at this as from a comics point of view, but he says that, I wrote for television shows.
It probably planted the first seed that I should be a writer, and when it was time for me to go to college, I didn't know what to major in, because I only wanted to be a stand-up comedian. So I applied to USC Cinema School because I didn't know what else I would do. I didn't really want to make movies, but I became I was studying screenwriting at USC, and maybe that was part of people like Shandling saying, you have to write for yourself. You have to create your own destiny, and that maybe it had more of an effect than I thought about.
The greatest thing about all of these is just comedy somehow saved our lives when we were kids. Like when I think back on it, of Leno on Merv Griffin and of Shandling when I first saw him, that they had control of everything. They could do this thing to make people laugh, to bring. Yeah, I mean they saved my life somehow, because I remember watching all of them. And then when you're talking to Shandling and to hear these guys, talk about this joke thing, that just the joke thing, like for him to say that it could take a year to tag a joke, because I'm the same way. I mean, things just sit there, and then you don't know when the tag's going to come. And that's part of the thrill of being a comic. And and Leno talks about it a little too, that he doesn't write anything down, and that Shandling sometimes writes things down, and Jerry's very anal about constructing things. But the thrill of a joke spontaneously happening is really the thrill of doing this thing.
And you could be your own man. That's what I took from it. Oh, I can work on this on my own, practice it, write it, and absorb the blows of being terrible at it for a few years. But if I'm committed, I actually can do this. If I'm great at it, I will have a career, and it's all up to me. It's not up to anybody else. It's just what I put into it, if I believe in myself.
Yeah.
And that was an empowering idea, because I was very comfortable saying, I'll take a crappy job for 10 years to figure out how to do this at night.
Yeah.
That was never something that I was afraid of. And I often think that it's ridiculous that in this business, at some point you start to make a living at it.
Yeah.
Because it is the perfect example of something you would do for free. And I say to my kids, I don't know what you want to do for a living. I just lucked out that the thing I do pays well.
Yeah.
But I would do it anyway. It's just it happened to be a weird jackpot.
Yeah.
But if it was like $18,000 a year, I probably would be doing it right now, and we would be in a tiny apartment together.
Going over my act.
Exactly.
Where do you go from here? Like right now, you're established as like
Right.
one of the top comedians, and you get work not only in the clubs but in Atlantic City. How much farther can you get? Because only a certain amount of people work like shows by themselves at Universal Amphitheater.
Right. Well, to do that, you have to have exposure, and how you get that it's a tricky point that I'm at, that everyone that you'll be talking to is at. Because there's a lot you could do. A TV series, you could do a sitcom, which a lot of people don't want to be associated with. You could do movies, they're hard to get, and it's hard to have a hit. You could just do stand-up and hope that you catch on after a while, like Gallagher, and you got specials and did it that way. There's a lot of different ways. I'm going to do acting. I'm going to do some acting because it's easy for me, and there's a lot of good vehicles for exposure as an actor. And but stand-up is what I am. I'm a comedian, and the acting will just be to improve my visibility.
And what kind of vehicles are you looking for?
Quality. That's my only real consideration. It could be anything, as long as the people are trying to do something good. There's a lot of things that I've been offered that I didn't do because I don't want to do a piece of junk. I'm not starving, and I feel a responsibility to the people that like what I've done so far. And I think the only reason they like what I've done so far is because I've done everything I can to make it really high quality stuff. So I want to stick to that.
What would success be if you achieved success of everything you wanted to do? What would it be? At what level?
I think what Bill Cosby is doing, to perform in concert, to perform in the top rooms in the country, to be he does his commercials, but to be well known and to be considered one of the best stand-up comics you can see. That's what I want to be. I want to be the best that I can possibly be.
Well, that should do it.
Okay.
That's part one of a two-part interview with Judd Apatow. Part two will be coming up on Thursday. And in that one, we really talk about, comedy philosophies. We talk about movies he's made, his favorite movies. And we really talk about how he feels about his career and where he's at now. And, of course, I talk about myself a bit. So look forward to that. Judd Apatow, part two, coming up in just a couple days. And you can go to WTFpod.com. Send me some feedback on these episodes if you like, and get on the mailing list so you can know ahead of time what's happening. That's WTFpod.com. And obviously you can get all the links to all the other stuff there. Are we doing this? Really? Wait for it. Are we doing this? Wait for it. How? What the fuck?
WTF.
And it's also, what the fuck? What's wrong with me? It's time for WTF. What the fuck?
With Marc Maron.
Okay, we're doing this. How are you, what the fuckers? What the fuck buddies? What the fucking ears? What the fuck nicks? Nice to have you back. We are about to begin part 2 of the Judd Apatow interviews. I did a 2-part interview. Obviously, many of you listened to the first one where I talked to Judd a bit about, how he started, but more importantly, we showcased basically his version of WTF, which he did when he was 16 years old. Segments of the interviews he did as a high school student with Jerry Seinfeld, Gary Shandling, and Jay Leno, and really learned about how this was really Judd, trying to put together his future. And now that we are in his future, in this episode, we're going to talk to Judd about where he's at now, how he feels about comedy, about his own films, about his career, and about how his life is, as usual. So this is more of a traditional WTF interview. So let's get right to it. This is part 2 of the WTF Judd Apatow interview. Enjoy. I met you briefly. The first time I met you was at a party at Stacey Nelson's house. She was a publicist. I was dating her. I was being held hostage at her house. Yes. I did the A-list. I think it was 1989. Mm-hmm. Amazing Jonathan. I met you at a party, and you insisted that I was never going to leave L.A., and I left. And
really?
And I wish. Why
would I say that?
It was one of those weird moments where everyone's hanging around, and you go so what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm staying at her house, and I got to go back to New York. You said that you'll be back. You'll be back. It was almost ominous, and and then you said you shouldn't leave. It's something to that degree. But I left. I probably should have listened to you because I didn't come back for years. But there was that whole crew there at that time. It was Ben Stiller, and I imagine that's around the time that you guys were working on the show. Was that 88?
The show was 90. We probably started working on it in 91 and it aired in 92.
And that was the first real TV job. I mean,
I wrote stand-up for a few comedians, and when they did specials, I would, I'd be a co-producer or something. So I wrote with Roseanne her act for a year, and she did this great HBO special where she wore a gold lame Elvis outfit.
Right.
And she shot it in Minnesota, and I wrote jokes for Tom Arnold and wrote a few specials for him. But then I met Ben at an Elvis Costello Unplugged concert. And we both knew HBO was looking for a sketch show, and we thought of something in 2 weeks and sold it. And at the time we sold it, people thought we had been friends forever, and we had known each other for 14 days.
And you still friends?
Yes.
And because I talked to him. Did you listen to that one?
I did. I enjoyed it. It was fun hearing him talk about the days when we were first getting started.
Now, in Funny People, you saw that footage of you and Adam, and Janine.
Yes, and Ben.
And you were all, and what year was that, 89 or 88?
That was 89 or 90. And in the footage in the beginning of the movie, you see Adam making a phony phone call. And actually, I shot it in our apartment, and Ben Stiller and Janine Garofalo are there laughing. So you see them very briefly in the opening credits. And at the time, Adam was so funny but had no outlet, so he would make phony phone calls for hours and hours. And I thought he was so hilarious that it didn't make sense that I wouldn't record it. I felt bad that they would disappear and never be heard again. So first I would audio record them and then video record them.
Do you have all that stuff too?
I have all of it stuff. I when we were doing Funny People, I found hours and hours of Adam Sandler funny phone calls. It was always calling Jerry's Deli and complaining about the roast beef and saying it made him sick. And they would always be so nice. And then he would be an old lady, and he would negotiate getting a free sandwich.
And he'd go get it, or he wouldn't?
He would never go get it, but it was always like, could I get a free sandwich for my trouble? And they would say, okay. And he would say, well, I had turkey, but I don't want to get hurt again. Could I, this time I get the roast beef? And he would keep them on the line for 20 minutes negotiating the sandwich. And as a comedy nerd, I knew that's the guy.
Yeah.
I just, to me, it was no different than watching one of the people I looked up to who was on TV.
Yeah.
And we all had a sense, oh, Adam's gonna hit. This is, there's no way this doesn't happen.
Right.
He just delighted us. I mean, he made us laugh so hard. And back then, when he wasn't making movies or on Saturday Night Live, he took all the energy he uses now to make these movies and would just do it to you.
Yeah.
Or strangers on the street. I mean, he would try to be funny in situations where now he's probably too tired to bother being funny, like a phony phone call.
Now, so you had that sense of him, and you keep using comedy nerd, but back then that didn't exist. You were just a guy that loved comedy.
I remember moving to L.A., and I started doing stand-up at this place called the L.A. Cabaret in the Valley in Encino, and I started meeting comedians for the first time, personally, not just interviewing them, and I realized they're all like me. They all like the same stuff. Yeah. I finally can talk to people about Monty Python and the weird sketches in the last 10 minutes of Saturday Night Live and the Marx Brothers, and I felt like the B-girl in the video, and then they opened the gates, and there's like 100 other B-girls. I used to cry watching that video because that's how I felt moving to Los Angeles, hanging out with Dana Gould, talking about Elvis Costello songs and all these things that we were into.
Well, that's a pretty there is a level of really bright comics, but there's also the other level as well.
Sure. Yes. I avoided them for the most part.
You found who your crew was. Now, what is it like? I guess, and from my own personal knowledge. So now, you the ones you wrote 40-Year-Old Virgin
with Steve Carell,
and you wrote Knocked Up.
Yes.
And you wrote Funny People, obviously. Mm-hmm. And you wrote, you didn't write Superbad, you produced.
I produced Superbad, yes.
You produced the Pineapple Express.
And I wrote the story with Seth and Evan.
But now, when you what is the role? Because I'm unclear. Cause I never really understood show business, which is you can see. But when you produce something, when your company, whatever's on that board right now, becomes a movie.
Yes.
Are you that involved in all of your productions? What is the role of a producer?
I think it's different for every producer. Some producers might just help you sell something, get you the money to make it. Some producers are very deeply, creatively involved in every step of the process. For me, I'm a writer, so as a producer, the thing that I can do that's most valuable is, from the earliest stages, talk about the story with you and pitch it around and try to make it better. And then I have failed enough in this business to know what can go wrong.
Like what? And what are your failures do you consider?
Well, I certainly had a lot of experiences where I didn't control the casting. And so early on I realized, if I can't hire the right actors, it's not going to work. Even if they're great actors, if they're the wrong actors, it's a disaster. Or if we lose control of the script and you get rewritten by a stranger, it's going to be terrible. So there's hundreds of lessons that I took a beating to learn. And so now when I meet a young writer, so if it's Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, and they've been working on Superbad for 7 years, literally they started working on it when they were 13, 14 years old. There's 100 landmines I can help them avoid because I got blown up, by them before.
But, it seemed to me that movie made sense for you because it did what you like to do. It seemed to me that movie had elements that were so personal and clearly so, genuine that they were undeniably real.
That's what I loved about the script. They showed me the script in 2001 or 2002, and we did a table read of it where Seth would play one of the kids. Yeah. And him and Jason Segel read it. By the time we had it made, they were too old to play those parts. But I related to a story about two nerdy guys realizing that they went all the way through high school and never learned how to talk to girls, never learned how to be social. They just hung out with each other, and now they're going to go to different colleges, and they're fucked. So that in a panic, they try to make up for lost time. But over the course of many years of reading it and punching it up and talking about it, we all figured out that it really was a love story about high school friendship and what that means. And once everybody tuned into that, and we hired Greg Mottola to direct it, it actually, in addition to some amazing comedy writing, became an emotional movie. And that's why I think those guys made a classic, because it's strangely powerful in the way it reminds you of how much you loved your best friend in high school.
Yeah, it was one of the things that really drew me more into your work, and also this Freaks and Geeksing. This is a recurring theme with you, is that these socially awkward, alienated, guys that have to deal with that and have to group with each other and sort of have this different type of strength to get through things.
Cocky nerds. That's what me and Leslie always talk about. It's people who think they don't think ill of themselves. They actually think that there's something special about themselves, but no one's noticed it.
Right.
And so the characters on Freaks and Geeks, the geeks, they look down on the people who beat on them.
Yeah.
But they still are terrified of them.
Right.
And so that's what makes them interesting.
But they know they're superior. Yes,
they have an air of superiority as they're getting pummeled.
Right. And was this something that you carried in your life? Do you think that would you hang, outside of your fear of bankruptcy, some of the momentum of realizing your dreams and your ambition on that, on just this idea that, it had to happen?
I did have a sense that I was interested in something that no one else was interested in, and because of that, I might be able to slip in the door because there was zero competition. When I was into comedy and comic books as a kid, there literally was not one other kid to share it with. I didn't have a friend who would also love Seinfeld or X-Men comic books in 1976 or 77. I was alone, and I did think it was kind of cool. I never thought, I'm a loser for liking this and no one else does. They were all into Pete Rose or the Steelers, and I had some sense that, I'm going to be the only person who does this, so I'm going to get a job. This will happen. There's no competition here.
Well, I guess you and Ben and Freaks and Geeks and the Ben Stiller Show and Mr. Show to some degree, really created this community of comedy nerds in some ways. Do you feel that?
I think that Ben, in a lot of ways, is the beginning of much of what's happened in modern comedy. He did the Ben Stiller Show on MTV, which was a Larry Sanders-esque show where it was behind the scenes of a sketch show where Ben was kind of a jerk, and he did it with Jeff Kahn, who worked on the Ben Stiller Show, and Harry O'Reilly was one of the actors, and he did this great U2 sketch, parody of the U2 Playing on the Roof, and a Richard Grieco parody, Looker, and he did filmic parodies. We used to call it SCTV if they had money.
Yeah.
And I met Ben after he did that. So when we created the Ben Stiller Show together, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Ben knew how to make short films. I just was the guy trying to hopefully figure out how to not have Ben realize I didn't know how to do anything but write stand-up jokes. So I'm just keeping my mouth shut and listening to Ben.
Yeah.
Because he was already brilliant and had a vision for what this was. And slowly I figured out how to run a writing staff and edit. But I was faking it. I was faking it for a long time.
Is that what everyone does, though, for the first couple jobs?
It is what you do, but I was in charge of the writing and editing of the show. and so it was not like faking it as a staff writer. I literally was 24, 25 years old with no background at all. And I hired people with Ben who were brilliant, like Dino Stamatopoulos and Bob Odenkirk and Brent Forrester, David Cross, and so in a lot of ways it was trying to manage these personalities who were bursting with energy. I mean, Bob was
Still.
the funniest man in the world. I mean, the energy he had during the Ben Stiller show, when he didn't like someone else's sketch, he would be like, "Oh my God, we can't do that. Who wrote that? Your unfunny uncle?" And I was so intimidated because I wasn't anywhere near as strong as Bob was, but I also had to pick what sketches of Bob's we would shoot on the show. And then David Cross came on for the last few, and then you felt like, oh, this guy's in a whole nother world with Bob.
Yeah.
And they didn't write together at the time.
Yeah.
But that sensibility that they did just on the last episode or two of the Stiller show, I think sparked their interest in working with each other and doing Mr. Show. Because after a bunch of episodes, the show expanded past Ben's sensibility, and we started to have some room for the sensibility of the supporting cast and the other writers.
Yeah, I used to live with Dave, in Boston, and like then when he did Cross Comedy and they moved out here, like there was something, Dave already had a very specific point of view, and Bob is very different in a lot of ways, but it's interesting that with Bob's ridiculousness and amazing commitment to getting laughs at it, no matter by pushing this absurdity, Dave has got this weird angry heart to him.
Yes.
And the mixture really kind of worked pretty good.
I remember going to those tapings and being baffled at how funny they were. I see myself in the crowd in some of them.
You do,
and I really was in awe, and still am.
But you went on to do Sanders, which is another defining show for comedy nerddom. I mean, that's an amazing show.
That's where I learned how to write stories. Gary was nice enough to hire me on that show after the Ben Stiller show, but I had never written a story before.
Like a full script, in a way.
Right. I didn't know how to write for people. I knew how
you
to
wrote
write
sketches and jokes.
Yeah, I knew how to write legends of Bruce Springsteen,
yeah.
But I didn't know how to write about people. And Gary was very nice, and I was there on and off for 5 years, and he ultimately allowed me to direct an episode, and that's how I started directing. But it was an amazing place to be, and also scary because it's Rip Torn and Jeffrey Tambor.
Just scary.
And yes, and brilliant and terrifying.
Yeah.
And imagine having to walk up to Rip Torn and give him a note to change his performance. I mean,
how'd that go?
It didn't go well. It didn't go well at all.
Did he ever blow up at you?
I mean, he was a blustery guy at that time.
Yeah.
But correct most of the time.
Yeah.
And a wonderful person who would always wind up doing what you were trying to get him to do. But if you walked up to him and said, "Rip, could you? I think you're a little, nervous here." "I'm not nervous. I'm in charge of the place." And okay, Rip, I'm sorry. I don't know. Okay, we'll just do it the way you want to do
it. but just by planting the seed, maybe he'd come around to you.
3 takes later, he might give you one. And then he would walk up to you. "Do you like the one I did the way you wanted to do it?" "That was all right." And you did feel like, I am watching some of the greatest actors of all time, and certainly some of the greatest comedic actors of all time. And when they did the last scene of the Larry Sanders show, where Jeffrey Tambor goes off on Rip and Larry and says, "There is a book being written about Hank Kingsley, and you are not in it, and you are not in it. Fuck you." Or I forgot the exact words. They did it in one take and wrapped the series. I mean, that's ballsy guys. What if there was a hair in the gate? They were guys at the top of their game.
Yeah.
And so it was fun to learn from them. And Gary is, certainly there's no one better at writing comedy and writing stories. And just by watching him fix things, somehow I learned a lot of what I know how to do, just observing how he would think things through.
Do you think he's an underappreciated comic?
What he did with the Larry Sanders show is an achievement that it's impossible to even explain. If you can imagine having to write a show, he's the head writer, and then you have to rehearse it for 3 days, and then shoot the entire show in 2 days, so 17 pages a day, while punching up next week's script and editing 2 shows.
And also the idea that, not just the work ethic. I'm finding that all guys who, do well work hard. But, and this is my own question about funny people as well, that to create a cast of characters that work within show business, that are pathologically selfish, and narcissistic and and relatively not great people.
Yes.
Is it's difficult. It's challenging to find heart there. And he clearly did, and on that show he did. You find heart through the weaknesses of all these extreme narcissists and lunatics. And I think that in some ways in Funny People, that that was your quest as well. That it's very hard to sell show business as being a reasonable place for human beings to work.
That's true. And Gary used to always say the Larry Sanders Show is about people who love each other, but show business gets in the way.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that's true of any story. What's getting in the way of people who love each other. And with Funny People, I thought, well, what gets in the way for George Simmons is that he's so funny and people love him so much on a grand scale that it allows him to never grow up, because no one can really call him on his shit because he has approval from millions. And only when life is about to end does he realize, I'm alone here. I paid a massive price to be this guy. And we all know people like that.
Was there a sense, though, that he hated what made him famous, though?
I think what I was intending to do was to have him have a career that you couldn't, in hindsight, be super proud of. Where Adam in life has done, a mix of big crowd-pleasing movies and Paul Thomas Anderson and James Brooks movies, and he's very daring as an actor, and he's done things on the entire spectrum. I wanted this to be someone that was a little more like Dangerfield, where he just did Back to School, and that was his,
it over and over again.
His world,
yeah,
and that it wasn't enough to feel great about it. He wasn't Richard Pryor. In fact, we shot a whole scene where he explained that all comedians are liars, and he's because Seth says you should talk about being sick. Why don't you talk about being sick? And he says no one wants to hear that. No one wants to. That's for like poets and singers. No one wants to hear a comedian say I'm dying. Here's some jokes.
Yeah.
He goes all comedy is a lie. Seinfeld, he knows where the socks are. He knows where the sock disappeared in the dryer. Dangerfield says he gets no respect. Everyone kissed his fucking ass his entire life. It's bullshit. He goes, I don't even know if Richard Pryor was black.
That wasn't in the movie?
And it felt a little inside baseball for the movie. But
are you happy with that movie overall?
I am. It's a painful movie in some respects because it's so personal. I'm also deeply embarrassed. I'm proud, but it's like standing naked in terms of it has little shades of all sorts of things that I struggle with. And I knew that I was going to put people through something. So where in a normal movie you think, all right, well, the 40-year-old virgin needs to find love. And when he gets laid and gets married, the crowd is ecstatic because he's a nice person and he deserves it. But to start with a person who's damaged and isn't necessarily nice to everyone around him, and at the end of 2.5 hours, he's slightly better with the potential to maybe get a little more better, isn't the most satisfying journey, because that was the point of the movie, which is even getting a terminal illness will not change the worldview of certain people.
Did you do things in that movie because you were frightened that would be too heavy?
Did I make adjustments to soften it?
Soften it, or to add elements out of maybe some sense of insecurity?
I think I went the other way with it, which is at the end of the edit, I removed a lot of jokes because I didn't think it was truthful.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were certain scenes where I could have gone to a bigger attempt for humor, and I thought, but you know what? He wouldn't do it
right
there. And that's what I like about the movie. It's meant to be a movie that like sticks in your craw.
No, it does, and I'm in show business.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a pain in making a movie like that because when you're super crowd pleasing, the crowd tells you, and when you're trying to be somewhat crowd pleasing, but really more make people think about something that they really don't want to think about at all, which is how would you handle looking death in the eye. You get more polarized reactions. And for me, I'll never know how I did because I'll never get a fresh view of the movie. For me, it's all an intellectual exercise at some point because nothing will surprise me.
Right.
But it's some people say if you can't argue about a movie, it's probably not worth too much. So I figure, well, at least they're arguing about it.
Yeah, there were definitely arguments about it in people I talked to, and with that disease, what was the thinking around that disease? Did you have to decide a disease that wouldn't be too horrendously disturbing, or that had a possibility where he could recover, or that was something a little unknown?
I didn't want to go into a chemo movie.
Yeah.
So I did find a disease, which is a form of leukemia where there is a treatment that is available up north that does work for 10% of the people. It's all truthful stuff, and it isn't one of those diseases where all your hair falls out. And
so you had to do some homework around a disease that wouldn't undermine your movie, or put it into a different perspective.
Well, we've all seen that movie, and so how do I not do that movie? I want Adam to get sick, but I don't want it to be about how hard it is to take your medication for more than a minute or two, and that does happen to people where, like, out of the blue, you're better. Now what the fuck are you going to do?
Yeah.
And sadly, I've seen that happen to people very close to me where, when they think they're going to die, they get very connected and more intimate, and they drop a lot of the bullshit, and they're more loving, and they have a different perspective, and then maybe a month later, they're told that they're better.
Yeah.
And all those old neuroses return slowly. And the person you were before you ever got sick starts to want to come back.
And wins.
And are you going to change completely? Are you going to change a little bit? There was something that inspired the movie, which is there was an executive of a TV network, and he said, and he was sick, and then he got better, and he said, when I was sick, what I realized was we can be number one again. and me and my friend said he's the only person who learned nothing from a life-threatening disease, and that was part of the inspiration for the movie. What if you learn nothing or almost nothing?
Now, when you look at the comedy movies that come out now, I admire the direction you're going, because I like things that feel like I like to feel things, because I don't do it in real life. If I can't do it sitting in front of, I watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid the other day because it was on a British Airlines. I was coming back from London. They had it in the collection part, and it was great.
Yes.
It's a great movie, and I laughed and I cried, and it's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's not supposed to make that happen. But I had this weird moment where I realized that I don't experience much joy in life, and that there are things like movies, and like you're talking about comedy when you were a kid, and also your reverence for continuing to admire comics, which you do, in comic actors. That's part of experiencing joy and life. And I guess that, I admire your angle on it, and I have a harder time. It seems that there's a trend in comedy movies now that you might start with a pretty good story that seems kind of human, but out of some weird fear or overcompensation, it just goes into fucking ridiculous land.
Yes.
Now, you've produced movies like that, no?
I've produced some movies that are better than others.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm not putting a judgment on them, but
yes, there are movies that are a little more premisey, and there are movies where you're sticking very close to the truth. And sometimes when you reach for a joke, I always call it sweaty. When something gets sweaty, like you could tell they feel they need a joke here,
right,
and they're reaching for it.
Yeah.
When it doesn't work, it's brutal. When things aren't organic, and also when you see movies that you can tell that nobody's passionate about it. It's just a project. It's a way for people to get paid. What those movies are. When you see, a movie that Sean Penn directed.
Yeah.
You realize he's not fucking around. It's like listening to a Nirvana record or something. Like, like Warren Zevon's last album. This is not a job.
Yeah.
They have something to say. And in comedy, the people that we like the most, when they score, they have something to say that's important to them, whether it's Chris Rock's stand-up special, or Curb Your Enthusiasm, or Ricky Gervais and The Office. They're not fucking around.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what I'm always looking for. Seth and Evan would kill for Superbad. It's not some comedy movie to them.
Right,
it's the most important thing in their lives, and there are things in it that they want to say, and there are things they want to do comedically that they think haven't been done. So there's a passion level that's not there in
those movies, in comedy product.
Yes.
In broad sort of farce, kind of like, let's just keep getting more ridiculous, which has its place.
And sometimes it works. Sometimes
it's hilarious.
Sometimes people come up with a weird idea, and and it's just funny. It's just for some reason they nailed it.
Yeah,
just for fun.
I agree. Yeah, and I think that's definitely has value. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was I believe that somehow or another you've redefined Jews in movies and on TV. That it seems that with Jason and with Jonah and with Seth, who are a force, comedy force as actors now and writers, that there's none of that shtick anymore. And these guys are Jews, aren't they?
I think that they are.
You don't ever think about that? I mean,
I come from a family of hardcore atheists.
No, but
and I don't
culturally
know,
Jewish.
I mean, I couldn't be more of a Jew for someone who is less of a Jew than anybody. I feel it genetically.
Right. Right.
And I've thought about it, but not too much, because I don't really understand it. But there's something in me, whether it's how I observed my family and how it wired me to behave. None of it is from religion or a belief in God, but some of it might be from a post-Holocaust lack of a belief in God. Because when I was a kid, although people went to temple and every once in a while people would bring out the matzah, everyone didn't believe in God.
Sure.
In a hardcore way.
But there's a cultural Jewish thing.
But they were Jews, and my
Right.
uncle owned the deli, and but there was a darkness to their point of view. I mean, their basic point of view was nobody said life was fair.
Right.
That was the only spirituality I was given as a kid. They never said life makes sense. They never said there's balance in the world. They never said you'll be reincarnated.
It's not fair and fear bankruptcy.
Exactly. That's what it was. You fuck them before they fuck you. And it was a little dark.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure some of that, seeps in. It's not all the neurotic I could never get a girl Jew. I mean, Seth Rogen thinks he can get Katherine Heigl to have sex with him, and he pulls it off.
Right.
And I've seen a lot of guys do it. That's why it was funny when some people said, that could never happen. And I thought, have you ever been out on the street? Have you ever looked at couples?
Yeah.
There's plenty of goofy Jews with gorgeous shiksas.
Oh,
I mean, that's what Annie Hall is about.
Sure. Yeah, and I just think that all of them have a very unique timing. I mean, they just have a peculiar timing. Physically, those three guys, I mean, as comedic actors, are really fucking unique.
And they're also working in their own timing.
That's
the
what I
movie
mean.
is reshaped to serve them. I'm not writing in some David Mamet style timing that they have to do. I'm listening to Seth's voice and trying to figure him out.
And that's the real challenge and gift of writing, is to be able to understand that much. And that comes specifically from writing for comics.
I think so, because I've tried to combine understanding myself and paying attention to other people. So I may be writing something I feel very passionate about, but I know when we shoot it and I play around and rehearse, I want to get to how Sandler or Seth or Jonah behaves so that I can hear them and let them do their thing, because I never feel like my jokes are the most important. I'm happy for them to beat every joke I wrote.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get... it's kind of a half-assed Robert Altman, where Robert Altman always wanted something else to happen, separate, and that's what I hope. My favorite moments in the movies are like, when Leslie yells at the doorman and just starts screaming, "Doorman, doorman, doorman!"
Yeah.
I mean, those aren't scripted moments. I just know at some point Leslie's going to get unhinged, and what she would actually say will come out.
Yeah. And you just let it happen.
Yes.
That moment in Jonah's moment in 40-Year-Old Virgin was too much. In the store. I mean, I can't even explain that comedically. I can't.
I mean, that's just a 19-year-old kid who has one line in the movie, and on the day we shot that scene in the 40-Year-Old Virgin, it rained, and so we had like 3 free hours. And as a goof, I said, let's let Jonah improvise with Catherine Keener just to see how scared he gets, just to see what he does. Yeah. And he was so funny that we were just having the best day of our lives watching him curse out Catherine Keener. And he did say, "Enjoy your fucking bankruptcy," and it was just very funny. And then we never tested it when we would show the movie. And on the very last test, we said, let's chuck in like 90 seconds of Jonah being mean to Catherine Keener, just to see if people like him. Yeah. Not that we thought we'd put it in the movie. And it just got such giant laughs. We thought, well, maybe for no reason the movie can stop its story cold to just let Jonah Hill go nuts. And people liked it.
So what is your perfect, in your mind, what is the perfect comedy movie? that you judge all against, or 2 or 3?
There are a few movies that I always go back to. I always go back to Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It pulls off a couple of things at the same time. One is it has this really hilarious, broad humor with Sean Penn as Spicoli.
Yeah.
But Jennifer Jason Leigh gets pregnant and has an abortion in it, and it's played straight. And he's able to be incredibly truthful, but he can get to broad.
Who directed that?
It was written by Cameron Crowe, and Amy Heckerling directed
right.
it. And that has always been one of the main models.
Because of the emotional variation.
Can I have this feel real, but still wax Steve Carell?
Right.
Can I have you care about him, but when I wax him, does the reality level not go out the window?
Right.
And so when you can do that well, it's a big deal. So that's a big one for me. Terms of Endearment, I always go back to as a movie about something very serious that's hysterically funny. And all the classics like Annie Hall and Dr. Strangelove, and I was watching Tin Men the other day, all those Barry Levinson movies.
How about The In-Laws?
I mean, the In-Laws, all the old Albert Brooks movies. Anytime you talk about it, you feel terrible because there's 10 more behind everyone you could mention.
But it's interesting to me that, like, for the most part, outside of appreciating it as a classic, as an inspiration, Woody Allen is not one for you, particularly.
I never mentioned Woody Allen. One, because some of his stuff is so great, you feel like a fool even mentioning you're in the same business as him.
Okay.
It just feels awkward to say I do what he does.
Right.
But also, I think probably when all that stuff happened to him and his family and the stuff with his kids, there was a part of me that disconnected a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Maybe after I read the Mia Farrow book, I just was like, got a little creeped out, and my incredible worship and affection got dented.
That happens.
And I don't know where I stand on any of it because I thought it was really interesting seeing that movie about him touring Europe with his wife. And he seems very happy and his wife seems very devoted. But then there's another side to it where you think, he's strange. He's stranger than I thought he was and darker than I thought he was.
That's right.
And so I don't connect to it in the exact same way as I did when I was a kid watching Take the Money and Run and just thought, this is the funniest man on the earth. I know too much now.
Right, and also it turns out that, that his insistence on distance from the character is disconcerting.
And it's a lie.
You want to believe it's a lie. You believe it's a lie.
I think it couldn't be a bigger lie for him to say, I'm not like my characters, or these aren't ideas that I believe, because that writing doesn't make sense. If you see Bullets Over Broadway, a lot of it, there's that section where one of the characters says, the heart wants what it wants. Well, isn't that the story of this section of his life? He wanted this woman at all costs. And I'm not judging it either way, but I know he's revealing parts of himself in all of his work. And so for him to say, I'm not like that, I don't feel that way as the character does in Stardust Memories. Well, I've been through a lot of the experiences that he's been through, and I understand why he felt that way.
Right.
And made Stardust Memories. So to say, oh, that's just a character, I mean, everything's 60% made up. But there's 40% true in all of it.
Right, but what I'm saying is that, like, the thing you want to believe about that character is that he struggles with this shit. And when you read about the reality of it, that, he was a lot more calculating and a lot more selfish and dubious. That's what's disconcerting. That he didn't fight what the heart wanted. Sometimes you have to fight.
Exactly. There's plenty of things I want that I should not take. Yes. So that makes it more complicated for me. I mean, that's the perfect argument for I should know nothing about the people who make art because it affects how I watch it.
True. When I read Please Kill Me about the punk rock scene in New York, about Lou Reed, as shitty as those, I knew they were all drug addicts and everything else, but Lou Reed was such an asshole. It just fucked it up for me. I don't read much about comics because I know how filthy we all are.
Yes. You don't want to know too much about anybody. Yeah. I mean, if you read
of course
the new Groucho biography, you're like, God, Groucho was a prick.
Yeah, of course
not like a funny prick, a real prick.
Yeah. Now, do you do Marx Brothers?
Yes, I'm very obsessed with the Marx Brothers.
Because of who taught you to like the Marx Brothers?
They were just on TV all the time, and I have to say they were the first comedy act that I connected to, and I think it was because it was so rebellious.
They were on New Jersey TV and New York TV on Channel 11 or whatever.
Constantly.
Right. And they, like with the Little Rascals in Three Stooges.
And then Abbott Costello was on constantly. But Groucho was basically saying this is all bullshit also.
Right.
And flipping the bird at all of the rules and government.
Right.
And for some reason I couldn't have taken to it more. I mean, Groucho, when I was in 6th grade, I wrote a 30-page book report about Groucho that was not assigned in school. I just wanted to write it. That's weird.
Yeah.
I was connecting.
But did you feel that, because you're not that aggressively, fuck you, and do you
No,
feel,
I don't think that's my point of view anymore. My point of view...
it was, though?
Well, I never felt that way enough to be super funny, quite frankly. There were comedians when I first started out who were working like Kinison and Bill Hicks, and those were the guys that were, the best guys when I first started.
Yeah.
And they were hilarious because there was such rage and self-righteousness, and they thought they had the answers for everything. And I never felt that way about myself.
Yeah.
I never thought I had any answers for anything, and I wasn't as mad at them. I probably didn't know as much about the world as they knew, but I wasn't mad like Kinison was mad. I was just trying to meet a girl and get to second base.
But you respected that, and that's interesting.
So, but I'm sure I had anger, but as I've gotten older, I really do believe that, life is about finding ways to connect with other people, and I'm more attracted to a James Brooks sensibility where all of these stories are about how people finally come together.
I think that's where the joy is. I mean, I think that's where humanity is. I think it's sort of like, the fuck you, I'm better than you, or I know more than you, or life is fucked. Like I come from that mold, and now that's all melting away.
Yes.
And I don't always know what to do with it.
And what replaces it when it melts away?
If on a good day, a certain, gratitude and belief that I should probably try to enjoy my life, before it goes away.
Yeah.
On a bad day, self-pity, resentment over disappointment.
Yeah. That's why I made fun of people. I mean, it's exactly that. He has a moment where it melts away, and then suddenly he's better, and what do I do? And I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just go fuck my old girlfriend.
Yeah.
And steal her from her. Maybe she'll make me feel better about myself.
Yeah.
And I swing back and forth all the time. And it's a weird position for me because I think, well, I've really done a lot of what I wanted to do. Why am I even doing it now? What's left to say that I haven't said? I can kind of rework it. But I'm also, am I doing it for approval, or do I really want to express something? So as here, I'm writing a new project. That's what I struggle with, which is, okay, what haven't you said? Have you gotten it? Have you made your main points? You don't want to be working just to work.
Yeah, and
so I don't know. I just look.
You have any answers?
I have no. Well, we'll see how I do with the next movie.
You just like to stay busy.
I've covered a lot of ground, and now I'm trying to say, well, here's where I'm at now. And that's the next movie. Is just here's where I am at now.
Well, how is it different?
In terms of what I'm trying to write.
Well, yeah. I mean, just like whatever you're doing right now. I mean, given you've had a beautiful run and ups and downs and an arc, and now you're a grown person, and you're writing a new movie. What's different?
I think. Well, I just want to go deeper and more personal every time. To the point where you start writing and you think, can I even say this? Who will I hurt if I express these ideas? Am I giving up too much history of my experience? But there's no way to dig it out without, going to the places that you normally would hide from everybody. And so it's literally just going deeper. There are things I did in the other movies where I reference an attitude, but I didn't really explain where it came from. So in Knocked Up, there's a sequence where Paul Rudd is on mushrooms, and he's like, I can't accept her love. I can't accept her love. And he's on mushrooms, and then the next time you see him, he's happy, and he's married. And you realize, well, it's bumpy, but they always get back together. And that's what the relationship is. But, as I write the next thing, well, maybe I want to show you what happened in between of how people come back together. And what those moments are about, and why someone feels that way. To
push it a little further.
I mean, I've listened to the show a lot, and you talk a lot about, your family and what makes you feel separate from other people. And that is what interests me now, which is, why do I feel separate? Why am I still in my room watching TV in my mind?
Yeah.
I'm still kind of in that room, and I'm not as connected to other people as I want to be. So I'm trying to do that. But even when I'm doing it, if I'm at a party or I'm at school, there's a part of me that wishes I could run out and sit in my room and watch the Merv Griffin show. Alone.
I know.
But I do enjoy when those moments of connection happen, and that's
why are we so afraid of joy?
I mean, that's the question, and I've thought about it a lot, and I think it's because we think right behind joy is a knife that will cut our throat, and if we really feel it, it's almost like a laugh, and your chin goes up, and your throat is exposed. And if I laugh too loud, someone will slit my throat. And so that's the terror of joy. If I enjoy this as completely as I want to, it's gonna hurt when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
And the mistake is it hurts already.
Yeah.
Like keeping shut down is what really hurts.
Right.
And so it doesn't actually make sense, and you have to think about it all the time to know that's what's happening. Like, oh, I'm not actually enjoying this.
Yeah. And if you're thinking about it, it stops it from happening.
Yeah, and then you're not present.
Yeah.
Because you're waiting for a punch. That's how I feel like. I feel like I have my dukes up all day long looking for someone who's going to punch me. And here's the thing. No one ever punches me. Maybe back in the old days, but that's not what happened.
But you don't feel driven by that, though. See, like, when people say, like, but isn't that what drives you? And, what would you be without that? And I don't know, I think if you separate yourself from the work and through everything else, that inability to accept love or that inability to feel that, I mean, the truth, there can't be a knife there, but I just don't think that we have a general trust of the universe for some reason.
No, because we came from these crazy, for me, post-Holocaust Jews who don't trust that the world is safe.
And also from divorce.
When your parents get divorced and suddenly you think, oh, life collapses suddenly. Yeah. Suddenly you say, hey, Judd, could you come down in the living room? We need to talk to you for a minute. Mommy's moving out. and you think, like, well, that's got to happen again. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I better be ready for it. And staying ready for it is what detaches you from life. And for me, that's been the great lesson of marriage and my beautiful wife and beautiful daughters is they will not accept that. Daddy needs to be here and needs to be happy and connected and present. And so, it forces me to do the work to not be the guy who wants to detach.
Or split.
Yeah, and that wiring is intense. Mm. And I've had to also accept, like, I shouldn't beat up on myself because I'm wired that way. I can't be mad at myself, but I can just keep coming back. And that's all I can do. I just got to keep coming back. And in my work, when I look at it and I go, what did I write about? Yeah. It is about that. It's about the 40-year-old virgin hides in his room and plays with his toys because he's afraid that people are going to tell him, you think you're a freak? You are. And so it takes so much for him to put himself out there to find out, oh, he is lovable. She loves him. Yeah. And the same in a way with Seth Rogen. There's this beautiful woman. She does love you. You don't have to stay stoned all day long. You can enter into this experience. Or even funny people. Adam can open up to the fact that Seth is a good guy and can be his friend, and there might be a different way to do this.
Though out of all of them, that one you don't feel is going to stick.
You feel like he's going to have the hardest time. And in a way, it's the most truthful. Right. Because people, I've been in therapy for a very long time. It's a small incremental adjustment that happens, and you have to really work to make the change.
Be vigilant.
Because it's like biofeedback. You're trying to, through repetition, change where your mind goes.
How you're hardwired.
I mean, you're in therapy now, right?
No, I need to be.
Did you ever go?
I did for a while. It helped me, and I'm at this juncture now where I clearly have to go back. Something just happened. I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all of a sudden, like, I've been feeling pretty good, about this and about my comedy and about a lot of stuff. And then, I don't know, just something just went. And you have that moment where, like, I fucked up 2 marriages. I'm respected, but I'm not hilarious to everybody. But yeah, I never sold myself that way. A lot of things start to crumble, and all of a sudden you're alone, and like I wish I had more toys. Like I don't even go to TV. I'm not nerdy enough to have a real outlet. I'll just sit there and just beat the shit out of myself.
And there's nothing staring at the wall.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. Hardcore. I'm like, don't interrupt me. Don't take me away from this. And that was the weirdest thing about being on that plane last week and watching that movie. Like, I had that moment. It was that Havershock moment. Watching fucking Butch and Sundance. Because there's that moment. That's a funny movie.
Yes.
And there's that moment where, can I move? Where there are those unforgettable moments. And he does it. And it's like I'm crying and laughing at this thing and moved by this thing that always moved me. And there's no reason I can't do that more. Like, what I'm saying to you, Judd, is I got to plan my escapes better. Like, if I can just, make a list of all the things that take me out of me in a healthy way, I'll be okay.
I feel the same way. If I miss a few weeks of therapy, my therapist goes away several weeks and then comes back for several weeks. So he's always gone a third to a half of the time.
Yeah.
And I slip back. Yeah. I slip back every time, and you don't know what happened. Like, I like to read self-help books voraciously. I just read them.
You do?
Constantly. Buddha books, everything. And if I just stop for a week or two, my mind just goes to a dark place. And what happens is when I feel good, I get lazy and think I don't need to do the work anymore, and it just happens quickly that I drift, and I don't realize that I've drifted back to my old wiring.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very, it's disconcerting. And it is easier to watch Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids than to sit alone in the room or to have a conversation with another human being.
Yeah.
That is the weird thing. It's painful to connect sometimes.
When you're that sad.
Yeah.
Because when you feel the sadness tugging at you, because you can feel it in your heart, that you're like, you can't hide it. And there's part of you that wants nothing more than this, for it to have somebody make it better. But you don't want to put that on them.
Yeah.
So you're sort of like, no, fuck you.
And it takes courage to feel it.
Yeah.
To go all the way into it. To go, what is it? To then pull out of it. So it's like,
you need someone there to do that with, right?
I don't know. I mean,
but isn't that what the therapist helps you on some level?
I mean, I enjoy therapy, but I know that I don't do as much work by myself as I should to keep present. Like, I've always known that if I meditated for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at the end of the day, my life would be completely transformed.
Oh,
and I have never done it once.
I'm the same way.
It's like I can go 90 seconds, and I will feel better even on 90 seconds, but I won't do it. And the part of me that won't allow me to do it is the part that wants to watch the Merv Griffin show. It's saying, I don't want...
The part waiting for the punch, waiting for the knife.
Yeah, it's like, I'm protecting you. If you meditate, you're going to think about how none of this shit makes sense. And I guess a Buddhist would say, no, if you meditated long enough, you would know that it all makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's a part of you that's like, no, it doesn't, because no one said life was fair, and you're going to just look into the dark abyss in your quiet meditation and realize there's nothing fucking there.
Well, we should try it. Let's make a meditation pact.
We should do a meditation
pact. You want to? If you do it, I'll do it.
I will try to do it.
Now, what is this book that you've done for the McSweeney's people?
This is something I'm oddly excited about, which is I was talking to Dave Eggers and was a part of helping raise money for these tutoring centers he has across the country. 826.
826, right, yeah.
And they're in New York and San Francisco and Michigan. And it just hit me, maybe I could put out one of those books, which is a collection of my favorite pieces of humor. So the book is called I Found This Funny. And what is funniest about the book is most of it isn't funny. I couldn't help myself, and I just put in a lot of short stories that I love that most people would finish and say, oh, that was kind of depressing. That really wasn't a funny short story. There's a short story by Raymond Carver called Elephant, I believe. There's a Flannery O'Connor story in there.
Known for being hilarious.
Known for her hilarious prose.
So hilarious. It is actually funny, though.
Andre Debut, who's a writer who wrote a short story that became the movie In the Bedroom. But in addition to that, There's a television pilot that Robert Smigel and Conan O'Brien wrote for Adam West 20 years ago called Look Well, which is an incredible piece of comedy writing. There's my favorite Adam McKay, Tom Giannis sketch from Saturday Night Live, and these Tony Hoagland poems and Simon Rich humor pieces and stuff from Jack Handy, and a piece of Steve Martin's memoirs. And it's everything that I love to read in this one 480-page book. That's perfect for the bathroom or an airplane.
Well, that sounds good. So that's out. What? It's not out yet, right?
It comes out in mid-October. And what's funny is when you do a collection of humor, when it's done, you kind of think you wrote it. All I wrote was the first 4-page introduction and picked everything, but I've tricked myself into thinking I wrote the Ernest Hemingway short story in it. And I wrote the F. Scott Fitzgerald Pat Hobby story in there. In my head, I'm so proud of it. Like I did something, but I really just said, use those.
You just made selections.
But it took a year to select them. It literally took a year of reading.
Well, I'm looking forward to whatever I can't read on that board.
I'm trying to think if there's anything on this board. This is a board of ideas for the new movie that I'm writing. I'm trying to think if there's anything here that makes sense out of
Paul Rudd's in it?
Paul Rudd is in it, yes. That's the one clue. Right there it says, "Is it Rudd's birthday?" That's
all they get. Let's not give him any more.
And it says piano recital. That's all you can know.
Brooks arrives. Is that Albert Brooks?
Who knows? That's
okay.
Yet to be determined. What?
All right.
Is it a man named Brooks?
Okay.
It could be any kind of a Brooks.
Well, this has been great and cathartic, and I feel better. I felt shitty when I got here a little bit. Not because of you.
Yes.
You feel better?
You know, here's the thing about me. I like to do anything that doesn't involve writing. So you think, I got to get going because Judd has things to do. What I'm thinking is, Mark, don't leave. Well, you're going to leave me alone with the typewriter, and there's a blank page.
All right, Judd. Thanks for talking.
All right.
Okay, folks, that's it. That is the 2-part WTF Judd Apatow interview. I got to tell you, he was just a genuine, nice guy, and a hard worker, and a funny fucking guy. And it was lovely talking to him. Please go to WTFpod.com for all your WTF needs. You can go to the WTF Pod shop to get any one of the 3 premium episodes. Enjoy those. And please go to punchlinemagazine.com for any of your up-to-date comedy news. StandUpRecords.com for their comedy selection. And I really appreciate y'all listening. Hope you dug the show. JustCoffee.coop. Hang on. Pow! Wow. I think I shit my pants. JustCoffee.coop. Thanks a lot, folks. Why can't I just figure out an out? Why can't I just get off? Just get off. Just stop. Bye. Hey folks, today's episode is sponsored by Trunk Club, the easy way to get clothes that look great on you. At trunkclub.com/WTF, you answer a few simple questions about your look, your style, and your size. Then you're assigned an expert who will handpick clothes that are just right for you. Your stylist, the shopping, the trunk, even the shipping are all 100% free when you go to trunkclub.com/WTF. Looking great is important, and Trunk Club makes it easy. And right now, it's completely free, so go get started at trunkclub.com/WTF. That's trunkclub.com/WTF. Oh, wait, we're also sponsored by QuickBooks. If you work for yourself, save up to 50% for an entire year on the new QuickBooks Self-Employed. It helps separate your business and personal expenses so you can quickly track what you spent for work and what you spent on yourself. QuickBooks Self-Employed helps take the guesswork out of estimated federal quarterly taxes. You'll know how much money to set aside for Uncle Sam and how much stays in your pocket. Yeah, your pocket. Try QuickBooks Self-Employed and receive 50% off at tryselfemployed.com/WTF. All right? Okay, are we good with everything here? let's move on to the show proper.
Lock the gate!
All right, let's do this. How are you? Wait a minute. Wait, I can't even do the intro. I can't even do it. All right, let's just deal with this. All right, today on the show is Judd Apatow. I kind of told you a little something about maybe something big was going to happen. So brace yourselves. Are you sitting down? Okay. All right, now take a breath. All right. If everything goes as planned, on Monday, I will post a WTF, an episode of this show that you're listening to now, featuring myself in conversation with, talking to, at my home in my garage, me talking to the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama. That is what's happening Monday. If everything goes well tomorrow, I don't know when you're listening to this, but I'm talking to him tomorrow. If everything goes well, if everything goes as planned, by the end of the day tomorrow, Friday, I will have a conversation in the can with the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama. If you are tuning into this show right now because you heard about that episode, and this is the first time you've listened to my show, to WTF, go subscribe to this show on iTunes, or go to the WTF app for whatever device you use. You can get that at the App Store. That way the episode with the President will be there for you when you wake up Monday morning. Now, what am I doing in terms of planning? That's a good question, Mark. That's a good question. Why don't I just interview myself now about how I'm going to handle the interview with the President? Well, what I'll probably do first is freak out for about a week or two. All right, I already did that. Check. Done. Now I just have one more day to freak out. And I'm in Hawaii, his home state. So I've been down here on vacation. I will be back in time for the interview. If everything goes well, I should be back today. But now I'm thinking about it. I'm spinning because I want to do a WTF interview. That's what I do. I haven't done political talk radio in years. No desire to. But now I'm going to have a conversation with the President, which is inherently, he's a political figure. I don't know if you realize that, but he's the President of the United States of America. He's at the top of the political food chain, if you will, which I never say. But nonetheless, an incredibly brilliant and interesting man with a life that I'm going to talk to him about, if everything goes well. We do a classic. Can I refer to myself as that? Is there a standard or classic WTF-style interview? I think so. I'm not exactly sure what they are or what they entail, but I know when I do them. And I hopefully will do one of those with the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, that you will be able to hear on Monday, wherever you get this podcast. But I'm not freaking out about it. I mean, does it sound like I'm freaking out about it? Because I'm not. I'm not freaking out about it at all. I don't think it's... Why would I freak out about the President coming to my house? Oh, my God, I hope my bathroom's clean. You know what? I should probably clean the house a little. I should probably prep the cat somehow. We let the neighbors know. My producer and business partner, Brendan's been at the house dealing with Secret Service. My neighborhood isn't, my street is going to be incredibly safe for the next few days. Incredibly well secured. Big day on my street. Had a very relaxing week, other than knowing that the President of the United States, Barack Obama, is going to be in my garage. Who wants some underwear? Or better yet, who needs some underwear? Come on, we all could use new underwear. No one is going to turn down new underwear. Not me, not Judd, not the President. So if you're getting new underwear, you might as well treat yourself to underwear that's 2 times softer than cotton. Get yourself some MeUndies. the most comfortable underwear you'll ever put on. You'll feel great with MeUndies. They keep things in place. They keep you dry. They keep things cool. And really, those three things are all you need, aren't they? Seriously, think about it. MeUndies just launched their All of Me Women's Collection, a 4-piece line of undies designed specifically for women. I'll make this easy for you. Go to MeUndies.com/WTF and get 20% off your first order and free shipping. Save even more when you buy a pack of them. They guarantee you're going to be happy with them, or your first pair is free. That's MeUndies.com/WTF. Did I mention the President of the United States of America is going to be in my garage tomorrow, if all goes well. If everything goes as planned, I'll be sitting in my garage with the President of the United States directly across from him, trying not to lose my shit, trying to play it cool and act like we're just hanging out, having a little chat for an hour. That's the deal. Whew. I'm a little queasy. Hey, you guys, all right, look, I'm coming to the East Coast, June 25th, the Capitol Theater, Port Chester, New York. June 26th, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, Howard Opera House. That one's almost sold out, so get on that. BAM. That's BAM, for those of you who don't know what BAM stands for, all right? Saturday, June 27th, the Paramount Theater in Huntington, New York, out on the island, all right? So why don't you get some tickets for that, right? All right, that's all I'm saying. Sunday, June 28th, Count Basie Theater, Red Bank, New Jersey. All right? Jersey, please. That's where my genes are from. Not the jeans I'm wearing. That's where my DNA was brought together. That's where it all happened. I was conceived and came out in New Jersey from Jersey people. The least you can do, New Jersey, is show up for me. Your wayward native son. All right? Can you do that? Thank you. Hawaii's been great. We are having a very nice time down here between panic about many things and just awe-inspiring beauty and food, a lot of fruit. I've had enough of fruit. I don't think I've eaten any meat down here. Some ahi, a bit of ahi, some seared ahi, some seared poke at Kentaro Sushi, which is memorable. I've had some amazing snorkeling experiences with my mask, my prescription snorkeling mask from Snorkel Bob's. Seen some fish. I wanted to jump in and see some turtles, but it made my girl nervous. She didn't want me to jump in and not come out. I understand that fear. Though I think she was overreacting. That's fine. Sometimes you do things just so they don't freak out, I guess. Don't want them freaking out. Tough enough when we're driving in the car. Slow down, slow down, slow down. It's a yield sign. It's a yield sign. This is that turn. Slow down. Mark, stop. Can you stop? Yeah. Had some good food, but mostly I cooked here at the place we're staying. It's this gorgeous place, the Honolulu Beach Resort Community. Yeah, there's some people here that seem to be part of a community. There's a dude just over, I can see part of the ocean from my resort community temporary apartment, and the guy below facing the water is prone to sort of just do a little the Grateful Dead shake. He does a little the hippie dance. He's out there, in his early 60s with his little oval sunglasses on and his headphones, doing that hippie dance, that convulsing in rhythm with something we can't hear. But I know it's a jam band situation, I'm thinking, or some smooth jazz. Maybe before I go, I'll ask him what he's doing the old man hippie dance to. Seems like a pleasant guy. Apparently he lives here. Very chatty. But how could you not be? Just living down here? I mean, look, I love it. It's beautiful. The idea of Kauai is great. But, we're a week in, and I think if we stayed one day longer, everything would fall apart. It's just time to go. I've had enough of the island. I'm relaxed. Now I'm starting to spin. I'm ready to get back on the treadmill of my life. Oh, and I mentioned, talk to the President of the United States of America tomorrow. It's snack time, people. You know you're going to do it. I was just in Hawaii. I'm actually still in Hawaii and couldn't help it. I had to eat everything, and it was worth it. So make sure your snacking is worth it, too. Get snacks that are tasty and satisfying but don't make you feel guilty afterwards. Get Nature Box. You can choose from over 100 healthy and crave-worthy options to be delivered right to your door. All of their snacks are all made with 0 artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners, 0 grams, trans fats, and no high fructose corn syrup or syrup. And best of all, they taste great. Plus, they're better for you than the other snack options out there. So next time you're hungry, grab some mini Belgian waffles, strawberry lemonade fruit stars, or sweet and salty nut medley and get smart about snacking. Free snacks delivered to your door. Go get them. Go to naturebox.com/WTF to start your free trial today. Judd Apatow is here. And I generally don't do guests. I don't repeat them. Sometimes people are on live ones and regular ones. But this one just came out of nowhere. Judd had he had some things he wanted to promote, and I do that with friends. And then we ended up talking for an hour. So he's here. His book is called Sick in the Head, Judd Apatow's book. It's available now wherever you get books. He's also doing comedy for charity on the Trainwreck Comedy Tour with Amy Schumer, David Attell. David? Did I just call him David? Dave Attell. Maybe he's a David. I think he is a David. David Attell, Vanessa Bayer, Mike Birbiglia, and Colin Quinn. They're in Chicago tonight, Seattle tomorrow, San Francisco on Saturday, and LA on Friday. Go to trainwreckmovie.com to get tickets. Trainwreck is the Amy Schumer movie that Judd directed. It comes out July 17th. So let's go now to what would I think effectively be a third hour of conversation that I've had recorded with Judd Apatow over the years. Okay, enjoy this. You should have like Elvis had his trophy shack. Have you been to Elvis's house? They have he has a whole almost like a warehouse out back that you can walk through.
Yeah.
Of just his trophies and gold medals and shit. Like he built that for himself. You need to build that for yourself. No?
I'd like to. I don't know if I can get permission from the home front.
Uh-huh.
for the Michael Jackson 40-foot statue of myself.
Wait, isn't that coming? That should be on. It's got to be close.
At some point, that's all you can do is build a statue to yourself, and build your own in memoriam reel, so you could watch what you think the reel will be after you die.
Yeah. I've often thought about putting that montage together. I don't know what the. I don't know that there'd be tremendous fanfare. That'd be funny if that's what you left as a living will, is a memoriam montage.
Guys, when I die, I've already put it together, the montage. It's 200 minutes long.
I tried to cut it down, but I couldn't.
No, there's too much good stuff. I got the Young Comedian special in there, my first evening at the Improv in full.
I have one of those of my HBO special from 95. Yeah, the 45-minute set.
Wow.
But but when I saw it, I was like, they made the right choice.
Exactly.
I had to trim that shit down.
I got involved in my HBO Young Comedian special edit because someone slipped me a look at it. I knew somebody who was a part of the production, and it was a very bad edit of it.
Really?
And thank God I was able to get some notes in.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because usually back then you wouldn't have any say as to how they edited your
And you
set.
weren't anybody then. You were just a kid on the thing.
No, I just happened to just know an editor or a low-level producer.
What was the problem with it? How did you tighten that thing up?
That's a very good question. I made a mistake on my HBO Young Comedian special back in 92 is I didn't have a dirty act, but I was so excited to be on HBO that I kept cursing.
Yeah.
And now whenever they show it on television, I get bleeped so much like I'm Richard Pryor, but there's no reason for the curses. It's just like, hey, have you ever seen this shit? You know, can you believe this fucking shit?
You're like, I have the freedom.
But I had no jokes that needed a curse.
You didn't, yeah, I no longer know how to talk appropriately in situations because I've been a comic too long. And
you go too far, and you don't realize people don't
go
talk
too
that
far.
way.
I just say fuck at the weird time. I punctuate with fuck, and it's like normal people don't talk like that.
I'm about to do Jimmy Fallon, and I'm going to do stand-up on it. And now I have to look at all of the stand-up I've been doing and really assess how much I've been leaning on cursing and dirty for survival.
How much have you been?
More than I'd like to acknowledge.
Really?
But that things are, a little too dirty. I can't really do in hell, Bill Cosby should be raped by himself bit.
Yeah.
on the Tonight Show.
Well, how does that? I haven't heard that joke. How could he be raped by himself if he's asleep?
Yeah, exactly. That every morning Bill Cosby wakes up and goes, "Oh shit, I got raped by I Spy." And then the next day, I got raped by Huxtable. I got raped by the Jello pudding guy. Every morning it's a different ear of Cosby
Is that the
has
bit?
raped him. I have only done it a few times, but most of the things that make me laugh don't really work on television.
So what is okay? So you told Fallon, because I'm trying to get on Fallon, but for some reason I'm not interesting enough for something.
I'm just an oddity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I should be an oddity. You're an oddity because you're Judd Apatow, and are you? It'd only be an oddity if you do not do any panel.
Are you not getting on as panel or as
Anything.
stand-up? That's interesting.
I don't know what it is.
I had that with Letterman, where I did Letterman in 2007.
Yeah.
And I was so excited to do it.
Oh, right.
That
was the biggest thing, yeah.
I wasn't doing stand-up, I was doing panel.
Right. I did one panel with him before he left. One.
Oh, that's right.
One.
I saw that.
It was good.
It was great.
The Mel Brooks thing.
And then I couldn't get back on again.
Right.
For the next
10 years?
8 years.
I know.
And so as everyone was saying goodbye to Letterman, I'm like, I kind of got blackballed, I think. And I kept saying to my publicist, you can tell me if they hated me.
Yeah.
And he kept saying, no, it's just you have so many actors from your movie on the show. Like, you're the last person from the movie they're going to have on.
But you're a good guest.
And I would do Leno a lot, maybe because I was on Leno a ton. But you know how you have those things that haunt you.
Yeah.
And so I get on Letterman. I'm really prepared for him to not be that friendly.
Right.
And then he's so nice to me.
Yeah.
He's like, Judd, I feel like I know you. All your friends have been on. And I shit a brick because the kindness was not what I
threw
had.
You.
It threw me completely. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I tell my stories, and I told a funny story about when I was a kid, I wrote every single staff member of Letterman asking for an internship. And the gaffer, like Hiram Bullock, the guitar player, which really made him laugh, the Hiram Bullock reference. And
you just sent them to the address of the studio?
Exactly. And I did get an interview. Yeah. And I didn't have
with Hiram Bullock.
With only Hiram Bullock alone in a room. And I get to the interview. Now, I'm completely broke at the time. Yeah. I'm going to college. I fly from California to the interview. Mm-hmm. This is the dream, the internship at Letterman.
Yeah.
When I get there, the lady says, it's filled already.
Yeah.
And I nothing like that had ever happened in my life. Where I had spent like $1,000 to fly home to be told something that I could have been told on the phone.
Right.
So I wrote the woman a letter, like very formally, but at the end called her the C word.
No.
But like, I really spent a lot of time and this cost me a lot of money and I just don't know why you acted like such a C word. Yeah. I'm like 18 years old. And I was so upset, I couldn't watch Letterman for almost a year.
Was this ever brought up to him? Did he have any recollection of it being presented to him?
No, of course not. And I'm sure he knew nothing about it. And I did not mention the C word element on the show. But right at the end of my panel, which went pretty well, I tried to read the Motion Picture Academy's reasoning for giving it an R rating, which was incredibly long.
Yeah.
Like sexual content and some moments of drug abuse.
You didn't edit it at all? You just went into it? You didn't make a plan?
Well, I tried to squeeze in one more bit.
Yeah.
About the numerous reasons why we were R-rated. But
which movie?
For Knocked Up.
Oh, Knocked Up.
And I rushed it. And I didn't get the laugh. And then ever since then, I'm like, that joke was the fucking nail in my coffin at Letterman.
I don't know if it ever has anything to do with that. Like, I don't like it. I don't understand the Fallon thing. It sort of upset me because I didn't want to be in this place at this point where it's like I have the third season of a show. Granted, okay, it's on IFC, whatever. Yeah. But it is the third season. What do I got to be? What do I got to do to be a legit guest?
Well, also, I think what happens is you think, does Fallon not like me? Is it one talent booker who doesn't like me? Right. And you never find out.
You never find out. They
Till I ask him.
You ask him.
I'm there.
Do it.
Jimmy.
What's up with Mark?
I'm just going to pull out a photograph of you.
You remember this guy? He thinks you don't like him. Look at that face.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing is you don't know because it could be as simple as
They're booked.
A scheduling thing, and that's the only reason why you didn't get on Letterman.
Ever.
But I really think my publicist is lying to me. I think he knows exactly why I can't get on, and he never told me.
You know what
he knew it would break my heart.
You know what's shitty about that?
Yeah.
We have the same fucking publicist. And I'm not...
Son of a bitch.
And I'm not getting an answer out of him either.
He's chewing tobacco. He doesn't care.
Is he now?
No, he's off of it.
Oh, good. So all right, so you're going to do stand-up. But are you going to do panel, or are you just going to go out, do stand-up, and then not do a guest panel segment?
Well...
That would be freakish.
Well, Adam Sandler is the other guest.
Okay.
So what I requested was, because I'm promoting Trainwreck, I said I'll do stand-up because I really didn't want to do stand-up.
Yeah.
But I knew that they would really get a kick out of it because Josh Lieb, who's the executive producer, is an old friend. And as soon as I started doing stand-up, he said, you have to do it.
Right.
But I think because he doesn't even think it'll go well.
Right.
And I said, okay, I'll do it, but you have to let me do some panels so I can mention the movie. And it's fun for Adam to see me do it.
Yeah.
Because Adam is one of the few people who's always gotten a kick out of me doing stand-up. And he'll be funny making fun of me.
He's another guy I think that you need to, apparently this is going to work. I don't know if it'll work in my favor at all, actually. But I think he has a problem with me that he might not remember. But it's somehow
he vaguely doesn't like you.
No, he doesn't like me for a reason. But I think he should be on this show, don't you?
Oh yeah, and he doesn't do too many of them. The one that I heard him do, which was fun, was he did Norm Macdonald's podcast.
Right.
And I think that was the only time I've ever heard him.
Oh, so
do that.
Maybe it's not personal.
Oh no, he tends to have a philosophy that he's best seen in person on video. So
right.
He doesn't do magazines pretty much ever. And he likes to just...
Doesn't like to speak as himself, perhaps.
Well, maybe less so lately.
Yeah.
But he just thinks, if I'm on video, you can just see me. Like, no one's editing it. No one's deciding what quotes define me.
Right.
I just like to be there.
Right.
Which makes complete sense.
Right.
And I think it served him well.
Well, you interviewed him in the book, kind of.
Yeah, that was a Charlie Rose appearance we did.
Oh,
together.
That's right. Together, it was a transcript.
Yeah, that was fun because even at the time I thought you kind of don't hear Adam talk too much reflectively about his career and his experiences. So I thought it was special to get in the book.
Yeah, I have no sense of these guys. I went and saw the Stones, and I went and saw U2.
Oh yeah, I'm going tonight to see U2.
That's probably good because now they're a few days away from the tragic loss of their tour manager, which I saw them the night of.
I saw them the next night at the Roxy.
Oh, you did? They did it the night. They did a small show the night after a big show. How was that?
Phenomenal because they can't run around, and so they're very focused on just sounding great.
I would have liked to have seen that because they have a huge show.
Yes.
There's a cage.
Yeah.
The length of the forum that goes up and down, and they're in it, and they're projecting things on it, and they're running around beneath it, and occasionally they get inside it and run around. It's crazy.
And is it great crazy?
It's pretty. It's one of those things where you're like, holy fuck, the technology that we're at now that they can do that. They're projecting images on it. My problem with the screens in general is that you tend to not look at the guy. Like it becomes very weird to look at the small man who's singing.
Exactly.
when you have all this other shit going on.
That's why the Roxy was fun because he's 20 feet away.
Is he a short man?
He's not short, but he's not tall. But
he looked about Ben Stiller's size to me.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah.
And the second he opens his mouth, you get chills and you think,
it's Bono.
This is one of the greats of all time, top 3 of all time.
Yeah.
And they played 12 songs, and off the top of your head, you can list 30 that you wish they also played.
Well, that's the point I was making is that there are these guys, and you're not there yet, neither is Adam, but you've had long careers of it's over 20 years already, 25 years, right?
And 30 now.
30 years. And we're still doing something.
Yeah, exactly. I know, and I've been lucky enough to meet Bono a couple of times, and he's in the same position as everyone else, which is, how do I stay relevant? And the fact that this guy is still relevant, and I started listening to him when I was 15 years old, washing dishes on Long Island in 1983.
Yeah.
And, the new record, forget the controversy of they tried to give it to you. It's phenomenal. It really is an amazing record.
Yeah.
And
I think
that's all of our dream.
Yeah.
It's all of our dreams. It's just
to stay relevant.
I'm happy.
I'll be happy if I have a window of relevancy.
Exactly.
Like I had 6 years, I was very relevant.
Well, relevant just even in terms of just doing good work where you feel engaged.
Right, good work. That's true. I think that's really that's what determines it. Not whether or not you can sell records or whether or not. Because the feeling I got when I saw both of them was like these are professional showmen.
Yeah.
Putting on a show and being who they are at the age they're at. I mean, there is a little denial, I think, about, there is a little vanity, but they can't hide it. That's one thing the screens can't hide.
Well, they have fun with it.
Yeah.
I think that the when you talk to him, what I was most impressed with is he has a great sense of humor about all of it.
He does.
He understands what he represents. He understands what people think about him and...
what part?
Well, I think he is like a beautiful, charitable person.
Yeah.
That in addition to this rock and roll iconography,
right,
he really dedicated his life to finding ways to help people.
Right.
And it's so easy to think ill of that as just a cynical person.
Right. A cynical person would think ill of that.
Yeah, because
who does he think he is?
Like, well, why Sting doing so many benefits?
Yeah.
But when you really break it down, have you ever flown to the Sudan and talked to people at a refugee camp?
Right.
Like these people put in an amazing amount of time and really do change lives. Like things that Bono has done has raised probably $1 billion.
Wow.
And every dollar that probably affected someone's life. But he's also aware that
people are sitting at home on their couch going, "Fuck that guy."
Well, it's kind of like charity fatigue.
Yeah.
That people have I'm tired of watching people care so much for so long.
Or this one guy.
Yeah, and I think that anyone who does charity work, whether it's Angelina Jolie, Jerry Lewis, people have an instinct to make fun of it.
Right.
But no one does shit.
Right.
Like people make fun of it and they don't do anything that touches people's lives, and it's good to remember these people. I've seen Angelina Jolie speak about what she does.
Yeah.
It's jaw-dropping when she talks about visiting a country.
Yeah.
And this is what it's like for these people.
Right.
What it's like to have no home.
Right.
And imagine sitting with these people and trying to figure out politically, what can you do with the 1 million refugees coming out of Syria?
Right.
And who in their lives tries to take it on in any way and try to get involved in solving things. So I love people like that. I feel like we don't
appreciate them.
No, because it's so easy to just go, he gave me a record for free.
Yeah, yeah.
So, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry that you had to take 1/1000th of a second to not, download it.
To delete it from your queue or whatever.
I mean, and the record's phenomenal. So I'm excited to see them tonight because all my heroes are those people. I love that. When Dylan, makes Time Out of Mind and you think, wow, he found a new fucking vein of something amazing. And Warren Zevon's last album, it inspires you for decades when people do this. I don't think most people understand how hard it is to keep creating, keep finding new ideas, new things that engage you.
Right. And also with those guys to keep finding a presentation of themselves that honors themselves, but also is provocative. Because they have to reinvent. Like Dylan has got, I don't know how conscious he is of it. The funny thing about Dylan, I've talked about this to other people, is that he put out this last album was all sort of crooning.
Yes.
And he's been on the road for about 2 decades now, hit or missing with entire evenings of people going, I don't even know what song this is. So it's sort of funny to me that this last album is sort of like a fuck you to anybody who spent money on Dylan tickets in the last 2 decades and couldn't figure out what he was doing. Because clearly he can do it.
He can do anything. I saw him and he was playing the organ. I don't know why he wasn't playing the guitar.
Because I think he's got
arthritis or something.
Yeah.
And the organ is facing one side of the forum.
Yeah.
The other side of the forum is looking at his back.
Yeah.
He didn't set it up where he was facing forward.
That's a tough room to do that.
He picked I'm going to face.
Oh, I see. So the whole side of good seats, not the ones behind the stage, but on the other side.
He's not facing forward, he's facing left.
Right, got it.
And so everyone on the right is looking at his back. And the whole show you think, okay, halfway through, they rotate the organ.
Yeah, no.
They don't rotate the organ.
Well, that's how you'll see tonight, how you two solve that. Because this cage is vertical, but it plays to both sides. But, the images of the video are on both sides, but they sort of have to move around. They're very aware.
Yes.
It's a very articulated shtick they're doing. big presentation, big show.
And they've been doing it forever. I mean, and to keep reinventing the big show.
So what are you doing for, well, first let's talk about, like, your involvement with charity now that we've brought it up.
Sure.
Is it relatively new to you?
No, it's actually what I've done from day one, which is...
Day one, like HBO special day one?
Yeah, I mean, the first job I ever had was for Comic Relief in 1986 while I was in college, and they raised money for the homeless and homeless healthcare around the country. And I just met a lot of great people who cared about charity. In my house, no one ever talked about charity. The word was not spoken. I never saw my parents give a nickel to anybody else.
You don't have a tree in Israel? Nothing?
No trees, nothing. And not out of anything negative. It just was not even brought up that your life should be about that.
Yeah.
How can I give to other people?
Yeah.
It was always, why are we getting fucked? There was no time for giving.
Yeah.
And so...
Where's our charity?
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone's ripping us off. And so when I met these people at homeless shelters, and this great guy, Dennis Alba, who taught me a lot about charity, who ran the charity side of Comic Relief, it just woke me up to it. And my job was to produce small benefits around the country. They would do the big HBO show, and then I would call every comedy club in the country and ask them to do a night for Comic Relief.
So it's a production job.
Yes. And I did it for years and years.
Really?
And
no writing? Just I
was just producing benefits.
Huh.
That's why I love putting shows together.
So you were the guy that when we got booked on a Comic Relief thing, thinking maybe, one of the Comic Relief people would show up.
Exactly.
At the comedy club. It's a Comic Relief thing. Maybe Billy or Robin will show up.
And no one does.
No.
It's just me at home alone with nobody.
It's looking for a name.
But we raised, like $1 million that way.
Yeah.
And
you did that for years?
For years. I got paid nothing for a couple of years, and I got paid $200 a week for a couple of years. And then it went up to $400 for a couple of years. And so when I started doing stand-up, I had a couple $100 a week doing that. And then if I can make a couple $100 a week driving out to Rancho Cucamonga to do an opening spot at a pizza place, I could make $400 a week and pay my bills.
Right. So you're doing these shows at Largo, which are all charities. They're all but how do you decide, as a person with a ridiculous amount of money, what charities to give to? How do people lobby you? Do you have a personal connection to it?
Well, this great man, Dennis Alba, who passed away, he used to send me a list every year of charities that were in a bad situation. And he would say, if you don't...
Charities that needed charity.
Yeah, he said, if you don't help them, these are charities that could go under.
Right.
And that's who I would give to for years and years. And a lot of it was like the LA Men's Place, which takes care of mentally ill homeless men.
Right.
The unsexiest charities in the world.
Right.
That there's no one advocating for them.
Right. And they're small. They might
small.
just be like a small non-for-profit thing that like to feed people or whatever. And they're local
and doing work that most people don't want to do, like really difficult work. And he would give me a list of those places. And then as the years go by, you have friends who are involved in different charities. Seth Rogen is very involved with Alzheimer's charities. Ben Stiller is involved with Haiti and Project ALS. And you just start amassing, people that are doing good work.
Right.
So at Largo, it's been fun because we've been putting on shows almost every other week. And because they're for charity, it's easy. People will show up.
Yeah.
And we just give the money away. Every once in a while, we auction something. But over the course of the last 6 months, so many people have been there. We had Fiona Apple and Jackson Brown and Sandler and Sarah Silverman. And it's just... It's so much fun. It's fun to produce shows. I really like producing comedy and music nights. I love
calling people up,
figuring out how to get Lindsey Buckingham to show up.
Oh, and good guitar player.
I go, we'll do Lindsey Buckingham with Whitney Cummings, and just putting together these really.
And Randy Newman.
Randy Newman was amazing.
Did you ever get screwed by a charity?
No,
that's good.
No, because I don't go for anything fringy. And so then I met Dave Eggers, and Dave Eggers, who I look up to. Because
the 627 thing?
He's writing.
Is that what it's called?
826.
Yeah, 826. I didn't have the number right at all.
Exactly. You're way off. People could not have donated money based on your recommendation. And he has this charity where he provides free tutoring and literacy services to kids.
Yeah.
And at first I did it just because I liked Dave Eggers and was happy to have a reason to talk to him.
Right.
Because I find him to be a very inspiring guy.
Have you read his books?
Love his books.
Yeah.
And he's funny as hell. He does everything in literature that I like in movies.
Right.
It's very, it goes deep. It's very human. It's also can be very funny and very vulnerable. So I've done a few charity events with him. The first one was before Seth Rogen was famous. We did a tribute to Seth Rogen for the charity work he might do one day. And so we gave him an award for all of his charity work, even though he had never done anything. Yeah. And it was really funny. And Dave Grohl performed with Will Ferrell, and it was a really big affair.
Where was that?
It was, I don't remember, but it was Spaceland.
Oh, yeah. In Silver Lake?
Yeah, and all these stars came out to pay tribute to Seth, who was completely unknown.
Yeah.
And it was a parody of benefits.
Yeah.
And then, and so then I was talking to him about raising money, and I said, I have all these interviews I've done since I was a kid when I would interview comedians in high school for my radio station, and I've done so many over the years with different people. Maybe I could do a few new ones, and we can give all the money to charity. So he says, okay, and so we put a couple together, and we auctioned off the book, and it sold for a lot of money, almost to the point where you go, I should have kept this money. This didn't have to be a charity event. This could have been just
So this is for the book that's coming out now?
Yeah, it's called Sick in the Head. You can get it on Amazon. Our discussion is in there. And then I have... Me and you talking, our WTF.
It's all in there?
Is in there. An edited down version of our WTF.
I went through it today. I was going through all the people in it. I didn't get all the way down. Good.
But also I have like an interview I did with Steve Allen when I was 15 years old. And
we have all those good ones, the old ones that we talked about the first time we talked, huh?
Like Harry Anderson.
Yeah.
Sandra Bernhard from 1984. But then I did Louis and Jon Stewart and Chris Rock and Amy Schumer and Lena Dunham in the last year. And Colbert, and did these great conversations, which are different, I think, than what you do, because I'm still interested in how they do it. So I'm interested in the emotional aspects.
Right.
Like, how are you doing, but also, how are you doing this show?
Yeah.
Like the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
How do you do the Daily Show for that many years and keep the quality high?
What did he say?
He said a lot of interesting things. What was most fascinating was when the interview ended, I thought, oh, he's about to leave the show.
Right.
It felt like an exit interview.
Really?
Because I could tell he, felt like he had put in a lot of time there, spent a lot of time away, from his family.
Right,
and he did what he had to do, and he did it great, and now was the time.
Like, when you heard, like, somebody, like, Stephen Colbert I met years ago. Like, I met him when he was on a sketch show. Like Exit 57, when we shared office space at HBO downtown when I was hosting Short Attention Span Theater. And he's always been a funny guy, and he, before the Colbert Report and all that stuff. So when you first heard that he was going to be replacing Letterman, what was your first thought?
I think he's one of those people that is going to do something remarkable in whatever forum you put him in.
Yeah.
He's just one of those guys.
Yeah.
And I had noticed that on the show he was doing more and more that seemed to be
away from the character.
And, and I had talked to him about it. He was at the first Tonight Show taping.
Yeah.
And he was saying how much fun he was having just, singing a song.
Yeah.
And doing things that were slightly outside of the character because he felt like he had really milked that character for a long time. And he has a lot of other things he wants to do.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be tremendous.
That's what I think too. Like, he's like so quick and so, focused and funny and charismatic, but very, he's got a lot of class, that guy.
Yes.
And, like, I think to fill Letterman's shoes, you got to have a lot of class.
Well, what's fascinating about Colbert is he has this history where he lost members of his family in a plane crash.
Yeah.
And he talked about that in the interview, that it makes him just see life differently. He's like, I've already been through the worst thing. If you think of the worst thing you ever can imagine.
Was his brother or something, or his sister? I can't remember.
Multiple siblings.
Yeah.
And his father.
Right.
And he said, what is there to worry about when the worst thing that ever could happen has happened? And he said that his mom said to him, you need to look at this through the light of eternity.
Huh.
And I said, yeah, but why didn't you listen to her?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you just do drugs? And he said, oh, I did do drugs. But
the light of eternity.
But he's a very spiritual person and a religious person. What
does that mean? What is the
well? That's where I get stuck. And the funny thing in the book is because I have a lot of problems with existential issues.
Yeah.
That when someone says something like that, I just never understand why it works because he is truly a touched person and a really good guy, and he teaches Sunday school, and he's very sincere and I think trying to do good things in all ways.
Yeah.
But also fearlessly hilarious because he has an amazing perspective on life. But Seinfeld was talking about that he used to put a photo from the Hubble telescope of space in the writer's room to feel better.
That would calm me when I would start to think that this is important.
See, I go the other way with that. That makes me depressed.
Most people would say that.
Yeah.
I've often said this, and people always say it makes me feel insignificant, and I don't find being insignificant depressing.
Yeah.
I find it uplifting.
And he kind of doesn't even understand my point of view because it's so clear to him.
You go with we're meaningless.
Meaningless doesn't work for me. I don't want to be meaningless.
Yeah, right.
I've tried very hard. I've really read everything there is about being cool with meaninglessness and egolessness.
Yeah.
I have decided I'm not that guy.
Against it.
I want to.
You're against egolessness.
I can't get there.
You're against the very premise of spiritual living.
I do it. I'll meditate. I'll breathe on it. But ultimately, when it's quiet and I'm alone and I think, in 1,000 years, it's like none of this ever happened. I don't feel good about that.
But the other side of that is when you're dead, you won't know the difference anyways.
That never works for me either. Like, I keep looking for something that will work for me. Like, I have a friend who has a great near-death experience story. It's a full, like, walk into the light story.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll think about that for a couple of years. Like, well, that guy saw the light, so maybe he's right. And I'll try to calm down when I get scared in the middle of the night and just go, well, he saw the light. But I can't really get an answer. And I know you're supposed to love the mystery, but that doesn't work at all.
You're supposed to love the mystery?
Yeah, people say, like, embrace the mystery.
What is the mystery of
just the universe? Like, what the hell are we doing here?
I can't think of that shit.
Me neither. I can't at all, and that's why I like comedy.
Yeah.
Because I do like that comedy's just saying, this is so fucked.
And also you get to laugh. Yeah.
You have to. I don't really know any other escape, and sometimes people or family members will say, why do you work so much? Because the quiet is tough, and the opposite of the quiet of this, the fun of this.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, if quiet for me, it's sort of like I get uncomfortable, and then it can happen in minutes.
Yes.
And then I'm like, I got to eat something. I gotta smoke a cigar. I was smoking a cigar, and I'm home. I don't mind being alone. But the quiet, I'll start organizing shit. I mean, you you'll write a movie. I'll put my records in alphabetical order. That's the difference between our ambition.
You could be making so much more money.
Sure,
if I stop alphabetizing.
Exactly. If I stop organizing my refrigerator.
That could be like if I had a self-help program.
Yeah.
It would all be about not alphabetizing.
Yeah, don't do it. Hire someone else to do that.
Exactly. And it does drive so much of it. But I do think that, we're doing this tour for Trainwreck. And each city, I said, Damien, let's pick a charity in the city, and we'll give all the money away on the tour. And it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it makes the whole tour just more fun.
Yeah.
It gives it a purpose. And the whole time we shot the movie, Dave Attell's there, Mike Birbiglia is there, Vanessa Bayer and Colin Quinn. We just kept saying, "Oh, we got to do the show."
Yeah,
this is
the tour.
This is ridiculous. So we're doing 7 shows, and it's exciting.
So it's going to be Colin, Attell, Birbiglia, you, Schumer,
and Vanessa Bayer. And you can get tickets at Live Nation or CrowdRise.com. And it's going to be so fun. And that's also part of it is we just want to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you're going to have fun. Yeah. You're going to host it?
I don't know. I'll be on early. I'll tell you, I won't be on after Attell, that's for sure.
And the movie opens when?
The movie opens, I believe it's July 17.
Yeah. How long is it? 3 hours?
It's 97 hours.
Yeah.
I keep telling people, I've just realized I would like my movies to be my age. I like them to be 47 years, and every year the movie gets a year longer.
Well, now they have Periscope. You can do that. You can just turn that on.
It's perfect for me.
Yeah.
All my hoarding, because I've realized that my movies are just hoarding.
Yeah.
I'm just hoarding life. It's not just newspapers. I'm actually just recording all of it and forcing you to watch it because I can't let go of any of it.
But what did we talked about it in the Vulture thing, but no one read that. So what, it was 97 minutes?
The new movie, it's I think it's about 2 hours on the button or something like that. And
you like it?
It's great. Amy really crushed it. She's so funny and works so hard and was willing to go there emotionally in a way most people won't. Because I've worked with other people and we're writing a personal story and they'll just say, nah, this is too deep. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And every time I would say to Amy, are you sure you want to say this?
Yeah.
She'd be like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, never a moment debate of, you think that'd be weird for someone in your family to hear that or anyone in your life?
Right.
Nope. It's fine.
Yeah.
And that's why the movie's good. She was very courageous and she's insanely funny and loves writing jokes.
Yeah.
So in addition to writing an emotional story, she loves, if I say, can we top that joke? And she goes off in a corner with her sister Kim, who's a great writer, or Kevin Kane, who's the executive producer of her show, who was on set the whole shoot. They're having the greatest time ever.
Yeah.
Coming up with those toppers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I can take a nap.
Yeah.
Usually I got to think of those.
You like joke writers.
I love joke writers. And I there's nothing more fun than saying, I think we can beat this joke and having someone hand you a paper with 10
better
attempts.
Jokes. Yeah.
It's just the most fun.
How is the Marc Maron role coming along for the next Judd Apatow project?
The Marc Maron role is it's percolating.
Yeah,
it's percolating. But I feel like you keep forgetting my excitement and interest in your appearance on Girls.
Yes,
that was the first non-Marc Maron part that America was given.
Yeah, with the comb over. Yeah, I'm glad you noticed.
And now we see what's possible.
Sure.
That you're also a chameleon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can be nice. I think the idea you had was to cast me as a nice person.
That's my new idea.
Yeah.
The kind Marc Maron.
I was once cast in a Janine Garofalo thing. Remember that thing that was written? Maybe Greg Daniels did it. That got shelved theoretically because of Janine's political stuff. It was a CBS show, I think. It was about a local magazine show. Like, she was the lead. She was the producer of a local magazine show, and it was this cast of goofy people that were supposed to be involved in the show that she was producing. Do you remember that at all?
Did it ever air?
No, it didn't get shot. We had our tickets. It was like 2002 or something.
Oh, yeah, that's when Janine made this horrible mistake to say that us getting into a war in the Middle East would be a mistake.
Yeah, was it then?
It was exactly then. Janine went on television. On CNN, I remember it so clearly. She was on CNN and she laid out exactly what would happen if we went into Iraq.
Yeah.
And everyone really was dismissive of her. This was when there was a giant rally in New York.
Against Janine?
No, against the war. And like the president just acted like it never happened.
Right.
And every single thing that Janine said has come true.
Right.
But she took a beating for being completely correct.
Right.
And one of the only people to scream it from the rooftops, this is a disaster.
Right.
That cost you money, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. But it was the point being outside of and then I went on to rant and rave with her on the radio.
Yes.
But the thing is that though she was right, whatever ultimately happened, the part that I was supposed to play was a very excited guy.
Yes.
Like not an angry guy. I just want to tell you I was ready to go.
You had a peppy gear.
Well, I was manic. Like I was a PA who wanted to get into producing television. I was once like a Wall Street lawyer or something. I'd given up this huge job in life to humble myself and be a PA for Janine.
See, that would have worked. See, why can't we pull it out now?
I'm with you. Just let me know.
Where's Greg Daniels?
Yeah.
He's done fine for himself. He has a little more pull to make it happen right now.
Oh, to do that show again?
He did The Office, Parks and Rec. He's got more pull than 2002 Greg Daniels.
Sure. What's that? What TV thing were you working on? Do you talk about it yet?
Sure. We have a TV show called Love, which I created with Paul Rust and Leslie Arfin, who are a couple.
Yeah.
And it's just a romantic comedy for Netflix that moves very slowly, and it's like an R-rated.
Did you write it?
I wrote it with them.
Yeah.
And it's based a little bit on the dynamic of their relationship. And it's going to air in March. We did 10 episodes.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. They just let you go do your thing.
You just keep working, man.
I'm working and having a really good time for the most part.
How's everything at home, Judd?
Everything at home is great. My daughter's 17, and so she goes to college in a year.
Yeah.
And so that's the main.
Is it sad?
It's very sad. You notice life moving with a child. If no one's around.
Yeah, I know.
It's like the weather in California.
Sure.
Because it's always 72, you don't know that weather exists.
That you're dying.
But when you have a child, they go through movements.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the year that they like playing with kittens and Lego, and this is the year they discovered boys, and this is the year they drive a car.
Right.
And
different levels of worry for you.
Well, the worry is just the whole thing. It's all.
It is, right?
It's all worry. The rest of your life, you're
I don't
partially
have that.
worried.
Like, I'm sad. I'm emotionally stilted or stunted like that because I just look at my cats going like, no, you're getting a little older. Sad. Skin's getting flappy.
Well, it probably is similar to that. I'm not a big
my
pet person, but I understand the love.
It's not
of
similar
pets.
at all. My cat's not gonna be like, can I borrow the car?
But do you think in some way that has affected you negatively?
No, I just think I don't have that perspective. I don't have the sort of like my humility is going to come all at once. Yes. Like I think that when you have children, you learn to navigate and negotiate emotionally and with your own anxieties, and you become wiser and more kind of humbled by that. Mm-hmm. And you're I think you have a emotional depth because of it if you do it properly that I don't have. So like I don't know that I feel crippled by it. But I do know that I'm missing that experience.
Yes, it's definitely a big experience. I know there's a lot of people who don't have kids and they feel very, very happy about it, and they make a conscious choice to do it, and they say, this is my life, this is how I want to live it, and they are very upset with anyone thinking that they missed out on anything. So there's
I never had
many
that
ways to
commitment.
look at it.
My life has always been like, I'm not conscious of how to activate my will for things that even like minor things, like why not buy a new house? Why not fix this one?
Yeah.
Too much anxiety. Like most of what I didn't do was just because I'm like, I can't. Whew, then I'm gonna have to. That's all. Yeah. It wasn't like a principle.
It's just you just got to get up and do stuff.
Right. It's just I talk too much about it. Or I talk myself out of it
because you're in this house,
and it makes me anxious. Like shit makes me anxious. I have anxiety issues.
Yeah. Isn't it weird? It doesn't go away.
Well, you don't have the same ones I do because you've taken a lot of risks and done a lot of things, and you know.
But that's also driven by anxiety. It's a different expression of anxiety. I feel like there's safety in accomplishing things or just being in the middle of trying to make things.
Yeah.
And that calms me down, knowing that I'm doing something to make things okay.
Really?
So it is it is an expression of anxiety.
Okay?
It just exactly.
Yeah.
There's no real answer to it. It's just a feeling that I had as a kid, like I need to do something. I need to act because this isn't working. And when I am working on a script or making something,
you can lose yourself in it.
I'm still anxious about it not working, which is the weird thing. I have the nervousness of what if this is shit.
Right.
But it's way more calming than doing nothing, which is where I can go to terror.
Right.
Sometimes. And so I like the idea of doing things, and hopefully it's positive and we're making people laugh and think about positive things.
Yeah.
So I don't think of it as a negative, but it's driven by anxiety.
But you've seen a lot of comics. You know a lot of guys that, like, for whatever reason, have just driven themselves into the ground with mental issues.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Mine aren't that complicated, but I am always surprised that they don't fade. Like we talked about this a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel any different.
Any growth?
Than the last time we've talked. But I also feel a little more self-acceptance of, well, whatever. This is
right.
I'm a nice guy.
Sure.
I'm not hurting anybody. I'm trying to put good stuff out there. And
how do you parent? What's your relationship with like your oldest daughter? Do you fight? Do you sit down and go, okay, that I don't agree with that?
Well, I talk a lot about this on stage, which is like
you don't want to ruin your Fallon set.
I don't punish them that often, but mainly because I don't want to be a jailer.
Right.
I don't want to have to maintain the boundary of
punishment.
Like, punishment is painful. So one of my weaknesses as a parent
yeah.
is I'm much more likely to say, come on, don't do that, than to be stern and go, you're grounded for a week. Because if they're grounded, I got to maintain
right
the grounding, and I have to like be solid and not break and go, when you're done with this grounding, hopefully you have learned this lesson. So I would have to suffer for the week. You know what I mean?
And you choose not suffering over disciplining your child properly.
Or like I really spoil my children mainly because I want to spoil myself. And if I don't spoil them, I don't get to spoil myself. I don't want to sit and coach with them to teach them the values of coach. I worked hard to get to first class, and I'm not going to give it up so you can have a value. You know, you'll learn it sooner or later.
No, they won't.
Well, who knows? I've been saying, I feel like the first half of my life was kind of crappy, and the second half was really good, and maybe the first half of their life will be really good, and the second half will be crappy. It all evens out.
Does it?
They'll get the same amount of good.
Well, look, she's going to college now. Are you going to buy her an apartment?
No, I don't do things like that.
Oh.
But, you know, we bought her a car. We bought her a safe car. I didn't go, I'm going to get her a shit box. And, you get stuck in this thing of you want a safe car, and then slowly the safe car becomes like a pretty good car. But when I was a kid, not only did I not get a car, there literally was not even a discussion of the possibility of how it could ever happen. It wasn't like my dad even said no. It just didn't even come up because clearly there was no way he was going to get me a car.
How'd you get a car?
I didn't have a car. I was like the guy just, getting driven around by his girlfriend in 12th grade. But my dad never said, like, I feel bad. Let's go get you a car for $3,000, get you an old Camry or something.
Right, yeah.
Did not happen. Zero discussion. So that's different for me because I feel like a lot of the reason why I succeeded was because I felt a little fire under my ass to get that stuff.
Yeah.
And because my kids grow up in a more solid situation, it's not like they're going, I gotta get the fuck out of Brentwood and make my way in the world. Like, they live a pretty good life, and they
haven't rebelled against that.
They're not rebelling against the Malibu Country Marts.
No.
But I know a lot of people who grew up in solid situations with parents who were happy and did okay. Jake Kasdan, his dad.
Yeah.
Dad wrote Star Wars, for God's sakes. He's one of the nicest men ever. His mom's fantastic. And Jake and his brother John, they couldn't be better and more hardworking. So I believe there is a way to raise a solid kid where you
without
can afford,
suffering, without making them suffer or miss something.
Yeah, like their lives don't need to be shit to motivate them. But you do get nervous about that.
Yeah.
You want them to have the energy to want to, take on the world and accomplish their goals.
Do they have specific interests?
Well, they're both very creative.
Yeah.
Iris is on the new TV show, and she's 12 and so funny. It's somewhat stunning to watch. And Maud was on Girls this year. And we'll see if they decide to pursue it. I want them to write, because I feel like an actress's life is very hard if you can't create your own material.
Right.
If you're just doing auditions, I think it's a rough road.
Yeah, it is.
So you want everyone to follow the Amy Schumer, Lena Dunham example, which is, have your Marc Maron show. You know what I'm saying? That's what you did. At some point, you get off your ass and you go, people always said I should have written my own Cosby show. Yeah. And then you do it. Yeah. And they let me do it. I'm on season 3. Yeah. I could have done that 15 years ago.
Maybe. So I don't know what my priorities were. How's Leslie doing?
She's doing great. She's shooting a movie in New York and
really
having fun. And
what movie?
It's a movie called How to Be Single with Rebel Wilson and Dakota Johnson and Allison Brie. So she's about to finish that up.
Are you going to New York?
And then I'm going to go to New York.
When?
For the Trainwreck Comedy Tour.
Oh, I'm going tomorrow.
And what happens then? You promote the Vice show?
I'm going to go shoot the first interview for the Vice show.
With who?
John Cameron Mitchell.
Let's talk about John Cameron Mitchell for a minute.
Okay.
I saw Hedwig with Neil Patrick Harris, and I saw it again with John Cameron Mitchell, and I saw it when he originally did it. And I just think he's one of the great artists of this time, and I think his work is stunning. Did you see the new version of it with him?
No, I didn't. I just, I'm coming at it. I just missed it. I saw the movie.
He hurt his knee. He blew out his knee doing the show. And the whole show is running around dancing.
Yeah.
It's like a punk rock show.
Yeah.
And then he has to do the show where a majority of the show now, he was seated.
Yeah.
And the show was even better and deeper because of that restriction. That's how interesting and talented
he's a pretty amazing actor, and he's a really good director. I watched that Rabbit Hole movie. Jesus fuck.
Yeah, that's a rough one when you're a parent.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know how a parent could watch it.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one. But
and
that's a great first. I'm just saying that's a great first interview. He did a bunch of episodes of Girls. He was at the premiere of Girls at the Party, and Lena and Jenny and I saw him, and we were like, how come he isn't in everything just as an actor?
Right.
And because he's usually directing and writing. And then he came on and was spectacular, and he beat up Ray because he changed the song from Ray's song and at the party.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that scene.
Yeah,
and they had a fight over whether or not you're allowed to push a DJ to switch the song. You have to let the other person's song play out first.
I was watching his other movie, the one he wrote and directed, Short Bus.
I haven't seen Short Bus. That's the one where there's actual sex in the movie.
Dude, I had to shut the blinds.
For your cats, so your cats wouldn't see it?
No, so people walking up didn't think I was watching gay porn. I'm just sitting there watching this movie, and all of a sudden there's a guy eating another guy's ass.
Yes.
While that guy's blowing a guy, and the other guy's doing something with the other guy's balls. And I'm like, I should maybe shut the blinds.
I should make sure that my kids don't have that on their iPad.
I
want to see that. See, now I'm going to watch that tonight.
Yeah.
You know what's a fantastic movie
What?
while we're on it? Jason Segel in the end of the tour. It's a story about David Foster Wallace.
Really?
And he plays David Foster Wallace. And a guy, David Lipsky, went on the road with him when he was promoting Infinite Jest, and he recorded all their conversations, and they made it into a movie. So it's all based on
real conversations?
Real conversations, and it's stunning. And Jason Segel is brilliant in it. I think it comes out in the beginning of the summer.
Wow.
I like to plug the projects of all the Freaks and Geeks people.
I haven't seen him in a while. I haven't seen him in a movie in a while.
Well, he was in Sex Tape last year, and he's always working. He did the Muppet movie, which he wrote, which is pretty stunning. The guy sat down and said, I wish there was another Muppet movie, and I wish they were a little bit better. He wrote it. I guess him and Nick Stoller, and it is awesome. I mean, they have to convince the Muppets to let these outsiders make the Muppets movie. You interviewed Jason at one point, didn't you?
I never did.
You had Stoller.
I had Stoller. Martin Starr's doing good from that crew.
That's right.
He's funny on that show.
Linda Cardellini's in The Avengers.
Yeah, and then she was in Mad Men too, right?
Mad Men and Bloodline. It's pretty great to see how well everybody's doing. It's almost ridiculous
Franco's doing
at this
his
point.
thing.
Yeah, it's silly now.
Yeah.
Like at first it was like, wow, the Freaks and Geeks kids are doing kind of good. Yeah. But then like 10 years down the line, it's like multiple Oscar nominations and I'm very proud of all of them because they're all really good people.
Do you talk to Paul Feig?
I do talk to Paul Feig all the time, and I hear his movie Spy is
good,
riotous, and fantastic.
Oh my God! Should I make a movie? Should I write a movie?
You should write a movie. It's funny because when you first were talking about doing your show, and I was always encouraging you to direct your show.
I did direct one. The one I directed was on last Thursday. It was on 2 days ago.
What's the name of it?
X-Pod.
See, now you're a director.
You should, and I directed The Joke. You should watch both of the ones I directed.
See, you're not a guy who has directed.
Yeah.
You're a director.
Right.
You know how you become a director?
Director.
Just say you're a director.
I'm a director.
There you go. Hey, you know Marc Maron? He's the director, Marc Maron? Have you seen that guy? Yeah, I just bumped into him. Marc Maron, the director. Yeah, he's also a producer. He's producer, Marc Maron. He produces that show. Like, people
say, keep saying it?
How do you become a producer? I'm a producer.
I produced.
What does it mean? I don't even know what it means.
You should watch those 2 episodes. Watch X-Files. It's very raw.
I'm going to. I'm proud of you that the show has gone 3 years, and I was laughing the other day because you asked me to be on one of the episodes early on, and I was excited, and then I read the scene, and it was like 3 pages long, and I just looked at it and went, oh, wait, I don't know how to act.
Come on.
And I got scared, and you had Jeff Garland do it. But it was funny because that's happened like 2 or 3 times where people have asked me to do something, and then I'm like, oh wait, this is not my skill set.
But you can act.
Well, we'll see. All I'm saying is, year 4, I may be ready.
Okay, all right.
I may be ready.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you.
It was great to be here.
And
you live. I know everyone jokes about how you live in the boonies, but it's comically in a place that no one would ever go. Like, I don't even know how you found it to even have decided to live here. I don't know if, like, you think this is New Mexico. Like, this is so far out that you think you're in your hometown.
How did you come, though? See, like, I think if you would have come down to New York, you'd see the amazing things that were going on down there.
Is it because it's bohemian? Is this like Williamsburg?
No, it wasn't when I got here. What happened was I was driving around with another guy who was looking for a place to rent, a guy I knew. And he wanted to look in Garvanza, which is over there somewhere. And we're driving around, and I saw this house for sale, and I didn't know how to buy a house, but I had some deal money. And I said to my girlfriend, we were living over by UCB, over there off Franklin.
A normal place to live.
Yeah. And I said, I found this house. And for a few years, it felt like I was far away, but now it doesn't anymore.
How far is the drive from here to the Comedy Store?
I can do it in like 25 minutes.
Okay, I'm going back to Santa Monica. How do I do it?
You're going to go to Santa Monica?
Yeah.
Well, you just go to the 110 to the 10.
110. Oh, I got to go across the 10. I can't go across the valley. That doesn't work?
You can go the back way if you want. Like go 134 to yeah, you can do that. I don't know why you would do that. Like and then go over on the 405?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that.
But that's a bad way to go. There's some traffic on the 10 on the way in.
Oh, there was? Well, what part are you going home?
Yeah, I'm going to go home. I'm going to take a rest before the U2 show.
Oh, yeah. You go on the Forum. See, like, you've still got to be stuck in fucking traffic with everybody else, right?
In what sense? I
mean, what time are you going to go? You're going to, like, it's a, you know.
No, here's the thing. Because I'm very Jewy, I will arrange, like, the dinner, the 6 o'clock dinner before the show. I'll give myself an hour to get to the Forum, because I hate being late.
Yeah.
And I'll do, like, the hour-and-a-half dinner so I don't have to rush.
But you, even with the special parking, you're still, there's no special Judd Apatow lane.
Are you saying there's some sort of monorail system just for my family that I paid for with the Superman money?
Yeah. No?
None of those problems ever disappear.
Fuck.
That's why I listened to your Kevin Corrigan WTF on the way here.
If you were Louis, you'd take a chopper in.
Exactly. That's why people start thinking about the chopper. You call up Bill Burr. You go, you got a chopper?
Yeah.
Can you get me to the Forum?
Did he chopper someplace?
He flies a helicopter. Bill Burr
does?
He took helicopter lessons.
Oh, my God.
So I'll call him.
Yeah, maybe he'll take you over there. Okay. All right, Judd, thanks. That's it. I hope I make it home today so I can interview the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, tomorrow. And by the way, that was Judd Apatow. Lovely conversation. We had fun, informative, good guy, good-hearted guy. I enjoy his company. Don't forget, HBO has a new comedy series called The Brink, starring Jack Black and Tim Robbins. It's an epic dark comedy about a geopolitical crisis and 3 desperate men who must pull through chaos to prevent World War III. The Brink premieres on Sunday, June 21st at 10:30 p.m. on HBO. Or watch it on HBO now. All right, so next time I talk to you, next time you hear from me in bulk, will be a conversation with the President of the United States if everything goes as planned. I keep qualifying it like that because I can't believe it's going to happen. Okay. Last day of vacation. Boomer lives!